Warrior Lore. Chapter 3173. When Xiaohua heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He helplessly looked at Yuanya's expectant eyes, and with a wave of his hand, he took out 2 parasol pills and threw them to Yuanya. He said, "Take this after you're injured. Normally, it's useless for cultivation." "Yes, master." Yuanya took the parasol pills and scratched his head. He wanted to return one of them to Xiaohua again. "The effect of this pill is so good. Master should keep one for yourself." "I just want one." Hee. Xiaohua waved his hand and didn't take it. "You keep it for yourself. If you want to give it to anyone, it's up to you." "Yes, master." When Yuanya heard this, he carefully put the 2 parasol pills into his pocket. However, just as he put it away, he suddenly took it out again and respectfully handed one to Xiao Jian. He said, "Master, you take one too. You're always injured by the bald donkey from Xiao Jian Temple. You can use this." Xiaohua's parasol pill was naturally for Yuanya to give to Xiao Jian. However, Yuanya didn't understand at all. Xiao Jian at the side was really anxious. When he saw Yuanya finally come to his senses, he revealed a smile on his face. Who knew that before he could say anything, Yuanya would say something like that? His face immediately turned ashen. "Humph." Xiao Jian unhappily took the parasol pill and carefully put it into his pocket. He looked at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Thank you, fellow Xiao." "No need. This was given to you by Yuanya, not by me." Xiaohua waved his hand and looked at the sky. He said, "You all should go and rest. Perhaps tomorrow there will be more people coming to River Tide Temple." Hee. That's right. My River Tide Temple is no longer the same as before. Tonight, I'm going to pray for the villagers of General Ridge," Xiao Jian said with a smile. "Although I already know Daoist Zhao's origin, I can't go back on my words." And Xiaohua stood up. "I'm going to cultivate. You all can do as you wish." "That?" Xiao Jian saw Xiaohua stand up and hurriedly stood up. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Xiaohua glanced at him and asked indifferently, "Fellow Daoist, is there anything else? I know that fellow Daoist Xiao will leave the Longevity Town in 10 days. In these 10 days, if there is a sincere person who comes to my River Tide Temple to pay respects to Daoist Xiao, would Daoist Xiao be willing to help?" Xiao Jian hurriedly asked, "The most important thing is that if fellow Daoist Xiao is willing to help, I will be able to gather enough money to renovate the statue of Daoist Xiao in the River Tide Temple. It will also bring glory to my Daoist sect. Let's leave it to fate." Xiaohua smiled and slowly walked out of the main hall. "I'm just an ordinary cultivator, not a Daoist who can reach the heavens." "Many thanks, fellow Daoist Xiao." Xiao Jian was overjoyed and bowed in greeting. He believed that with his silver tongue and Xiaohua's occasional methods, the incense offerings of Jiangtiao Temple would definitely surpass Xiao Jian Temple. However, this thought only lasted for a moment, and he immediately laughed involuntarily. With Xiaohua's help, how could the Taoist school be defeated in the challenge 10 days later? After 10 days, Xiao Jian Temple will no longer exist in Longevity Town. It doesn't matter if the Jiangtiao Temple doesn't have any incense offerings. "Oh right, fellow Daoist Xiao." Seeing Xiaohua walk out of the main hall, Xiao Jian suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "Oh, is there anything else?" Xiaohua stopped and asked curiously, "That? I know that fellow Daoist is an expert." Xiao Jian rubbed his hands and asked embarrassedly, "But I don't have confidence in my heart, so I want to ask, fellow Daoist cultivation is, what level is it in the first grade of essence energy?" "Oh, first grade of essence energy? What level?" Xiaohua stared blankly. How would he know what level of essence energy his cultivation was? Previously, when he was in the West Ocean, he saw a sea beast that Daoist leopard called 4th grade essence energy. Moreover, he and the others were also called 2nd and 3rd grade essence energy cultivators by Xiancheng. As for how the essence energy was divided, he didn't really care. No matter what level of essence energy it was, it would still be killed by him. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Daoist Xiao, how are the levels of essence energy divided? To tell you the truth, I have always been in seclusion, so I'm not too sure." "Hiss. How is that possible?" Xiao Jian sucked in a breath of cold air, and his eyes flashed with extreme suspicion. However, this suspicion slowly disappeared in front of Xiao Hua's smile and gaze that didn't seem to be fake. Then, after the cloud of suspicion, there was a deep sense of loss. He didn't even know how to divide the original levels. How high could the cultivation of this kind of cultivator be? Of course, Xiao Jian immediately felt relieved. If the level of the cultivator was too high, how could the other party be respectful to him? Sigh, no matter what, to be able to defeat ya, even if you don't enter the level, it's fine. Xiao Jian sighed and waved his hand. Hehe, Taoist Xiao, it's better if you tell me. Xiao Hua stopped instead, turned around and asked humbly, all right, since this old man knows that I will have to rely on you in the future, then this old man will let you experience it. Xiao Jian suddenly referred to himself as this old man, and the previous apprehension and caution completely disappeared. Please speak. Xiao Hua laughed in his heart. Xiao Hua, I presume that you also know about the 3 continents? Xiao Jian seemed to be somewhat teasing as he said, if you don't even know about the 3 continents, then this old man will really suspect your origin. Hehe, the 3 continents are naturally the hidden immortal continent, the Western Paradise, and the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. Xiao Hua also laughed. This old man naturally knows about this. Since you know about the 3 continents, then you naturally know that the hidden immortal continent is the origin of Confucian cultivators. The Western Paradise is the origin of Buddhism, and the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm is the place where demons run rampant, right? Xiao Jian didn't know whether he was asking Xiao Hua or talking to himself. In any case, without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, he continued, no matter if it is Confucian cultivators, Buddhism, or demons, they all have their own cultivation system, and they all have their own methods of measuring the level of cultivation. This kind of system is unknown to others, and it is also impossible to measure between each other. Therefore, in order to make a simple judgment, according to the suggestion of Confucian cultivators, the 3 continents introduce the levels of origin power. This so-called origin power level is divided into 9 levels, and within each level, it is divided into 3 levels, high, middle, and low. Confucian cultivators, Buddhism, and demons, all according to their own strength. These 9 levels of origin power are divided into 27 levels. Do you understand? This Xiao understands. Xiao Hua nodded. However, Confucian cultivators, Buddhism, and demons. What are their respective cultivation systems? How do they divide their origin power into 9 levels of origin power into 27 levels? Hehe, if you ask others, you definitely won't know the answer. Xiao Jian's face was full of pride, and he said with a smile, this old man has some knowledge, so I know a bit. Taoist priest, please speak. Let's not talk about demons. Rather than saying that they have their own cultivation system, it's better to say that they rely on their own inheritance and blindly cultivate. Moreover, they don't understand human nature, and they rarely communicate with us humans. Xiao Jian first put aside the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm, and Xiao Hua understood that he probably didn't know the secrets of the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. Buddhism? Xiao Jian's face didn't show any shame. It's just a trivial matter. This old man also didn't ask in detail. I only know that they also have 9 levels of divine ability, similar to the 9 levels of origin power. These 2 levels are Jieshan and Juechen. Jieshan corresponds to the first level of origin power, and Juechen corresponds to the second level of origin power. Then, what's after that? Xiao Hua very naturally asked. Didn't this old man already say? Buddhism and my Taoism are mortal enemies. This old man feels disgusted when seeing baldies, so why would I ask more? Xiao Jian waved his hand and said, let's not talk about the disgusting Buddhism. Let this old man talk about Confucian cultivators. All right, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and could only nod. But Xiao Hua couldn't help but count with his fingers, and said with a smile, it seems that this Confucian cultivator's realm isn't 9th level? More or less. Xiao Jian waved his hand and said, this old man is also not a Confucian cultivator. Knowing this much is already not bad. What else do you want? Hehe, that's true. Xiao Hua smiled. He saw that Xiao Jian directly used scholar and scholar to correspond to the 9th level of origin power, and didn't use refining essence into qi, refining qi into spirit, refining spirit into emptiness, refining emptiness into emptiness, and refining emptiness into emptiness. He already knew that this method of classifying origin power was only a measure of strength, and actually didn't have much relation to the realm, and Xiao Jian also didn't know the specific cultivation realms of Confucian cultivators. Then, what about my Taoism's cultivation realms? How does it correspond to the different levels of origin power? Xiao Hua knew that Xiao Jian definitely knew the most about Taoism's cultivation realms. You also know that my Taoism's cultivation realms are more divided into foundation establishment, enlightened. Xiao Jian had just opened his mouth when Xiao Hua was greatly surprised and shouted, "What? Foundation establishment is the most basic realm? What?" Xiao Jian raised his eyebrows and said puzzledly, "In your family's cultivation technique, foundation establishment isn't the basic cultivation realm?" Who? Xiao Hua took a deep breath and said with a smile, "Taoist priest, please tell me, I was a bit reckless." Xiao Jian glanced at Xiao Hua and said again, "After enlightened is fusion, heart-stirring, soul solitude, gold core, nascent soul, out of body, spirit severing, unity, tribulation passing, and Mahayana." Oh! Xiao Hua heard the familiar words gold core, nascent soul, and even spirit severing, and became pensive in his heart. Xiao Jian continued, "My Taoism's foundation establishment, enlightened, and fusion correspond to the lower, middle, and upper levels of the first level of origin power. Heart-stirring and soul solitude correspond to the second level of origin power. Gold core, nascent soul, out of body, spirit severing, unity, tribulation passing, and Mahayana correspond to the other levels of origin power from the third level to the ninth level." Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua understood, but he still asked cautiously, "Taoist priest Xiao, when true qi transforms into true essence, and true essence condenses in the dantian to form a core, what realm is that?" Hearing Xiao Hua's question, Taoist priest Xiao became even more discouraged and said almost unhappily, "I don't have any cultivation. How would I know this? Could it be you've already formed a core?" Fellow Taoist Xiao, sometimes it's better not bite off more than you can chew. -11. Chapter 3174. Zhang Xiaohua's heart was greatly shaken. Who else could it be? Wasn't it the last deity transformation cultivator that Zhang Xiaohua hadn't encountered after coming to this Xiaoyu continent, Xianlu sect's Chan Ximiao? Zhang Xiaohua steadied herself and looked over. She saw that not far from Feng Shu, there was also a faint, illusory figure looking at her with eyes full of pleasant surprise. Zhang Xiaohua was greatly surprised. She really couldn't imagine. How did she suddenly become a treasure that everyone wanted to snatch? Chan Ximiao, what's the meaning of this? This thing was first encountered by this old man, and it was also this old man who made the first move. You don't have any reason, yet you also want to get involved? Feng Shu sneered. Thing? Zhang Xiaohua's heart went cold, and she inwardly sneered, "I am actually a thing. Hee. What's wrong? Feng Shu, you're not happy? I was wondering why you repeatedly prevented me from investigating this little thing's meridians in the demon-resisting valley. It turns out that this little thing's body still has such a universe." Chan Ximiao sneered, "Perhaps that soul-searching technique of yours was also deliberately used. If it was an idiot qi refining cultivator, wouldn't it be easier for you to take over his body?" Feng Shu coldly snorted and didn't answer. Only after a long while did he say, "Since you know the importance of this person to this old man, you presumably also know that this old man must have him. You can leave now." Haha, it's precisely because I know his importance that this old man naturally also covets him. He's important to you, but isn't he equally important to this old man? But don't forget, this old man is also a spirit-severing cultivator, and in the future, I will also encounter the danger of crossing the tribulation. With such wide meridians and a sturdy body as a cauldron, how can this old man give it up? Chan Ximiao laughed and said, "Moreover, although his cultivation is only at the qi refining stage, the amount of true qi in his meridians is actually so exquisite, almost comparable to that of the foundation establishment stage. He must have cultivated a special mental cultivation method." Chan Ximiao, Do you still want to say that the most valuable thing is that he used his middle dantian as his sea of qi and didn't cultivate his lower dantian at all? For you and me, as long as we seize his body, on one hand, it's easy to cultivate our sect's martial arts in his lower dantian, without any conflicts with other martial arts. On the other hand, we can use this thing's middle dantian to cultivate others' middle dantian to cultivate another dantian, and it won't have any conflicts with other martial arts. On the other hand, we can use this thing's middle dantian's middle dantian to cultivate. Meow. Chan Si Meow said. Chan Si Meow clapped his hands and said, the most valuable thing is that this person's physical body is innately tough. Not only does he not have to worry about the thunder tribulation in the future, but he also doesn't have to endure the intense pain when he takes over the body. His original body's divine sense won't deteriorate too much. When the two of them spoke, they didn't use telepathy, and they didn't hide it from Zhang Xiaohua. These words entered Zhang Xiaohua's ears, and Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He really couldn't imagine that he actually had so many benefits on his body. It was as if he was tailor-made for others to seize his body. Feng Shu, tell me, this is a good thing that this old man has never seen before. This old man can let go? Chan Si Meow said with a cold smile. Chan Si Meow, do you think this old man can let go? Feng Shu took a step forward and released his aura, closing in on Chan Si Meow. This old man is also a spirit-severing cultivator. Feng Shu, do you think you can do it? Chan Si Meow also raised his leg, and the two's auras collided, stirring up the surrounding heaven-earth yuan qi like a huge wave in the sea. A hurricane rose from between the two of them, howling and blowing in all directions. Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing at the side, was like Xiaohua in water, floating up and down a few times before floating into the distance. Sigh. Seeing this, Feng Shu waved his hand, and the hurricane disappeared without a trace. Then, Zhang Xiaohua felt another wave of dizziness, and the entire night sky turned upside down. When Zhang Xiaohua regained his senses, he was no longer in midair. Instead, he was in a gray area. The storage ring floated quietly beside him, and there was also a bag of dirt and a strange Dharma artifact at his feet. Zhang Xiaohua recognized that Dharma artifact. It was Qiufeng's, and that bag had fallen from Qiufeng's mountain when he was killed. Looking up, Feng Shu and Chan Si Meow were still standing in midair. Feng Shu smiled and said, Chan Si Meow, you're quite brave. You actually didn't escape and followed this old man here. What's there to leave for? This old man is the same as you. We're both spirit-severing cultivators. Even if you kill this old man, my main body is still here. Even if this spirit-severing cultivator loses this spirit-severing cultivator, I will tell this matter to the Alliance Master. This old man believes that the Alliance Master will be more interested in this matter than this old man. Chan Si Meow said indifferently, Are you determined to go against this old man? Feng Shu was furious. Having a good cauldron to possess is the last method to successfully pass the minor heavenly tribulation. This old man has no reason to go against my own chance. Chan Si Meow was still indifferent. This old man believes that fellow Taoist Feng won't be willing to see a third person know about this other than me. Feng Shu's expression was uncertain. After a long while, he said gloomily, this old man naturally doesn't want to do this. But there's only one of this. If fellow Taoist Chan uses it, how am I going to use it? Fellow Taoist Chan, don't tell me you're planning to share a soul with me? This old man also just found out about such a good cauldron. Where did this idea come from? If fellow Taoist Feng has any good ideas, please tell me. Chan Si Meow said with a smile. Previously, I only had the thought of monopolizing it. Who would have thought that you would appear out of nowhere? Feng Shu sneered and looked at Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing on the ground with an ashen face. He said, also, fellow Taoist Chan, you didn't know the gravity of the situation from the start. You exposed my plans. Now, it's too late to deceive this fellow. What's the big deal? Can't we just use the soul-searching technique again? We'll just make him an idiot and leave him alive. Chan Si Meow said disapprovingly. If that's the case, do I need to lower my voice and deceive him? Feng Shu's face was filled with anger. If I use this soul-searching technique again, this guy's mind will collapse. This old man's consciousness will also perish if I go in again. Isn't this asking this old man to commit suicide? This, Chan Simiao came to a realization. He thought for a moment and bowed deeply. Fellow Taoist Feng, this matter, I was careless. Please forgive me. However, fellow Taoist, you don't have to be too concerned. I know a small mystic technique. There's no need to search his soul. I can erase this short-term memory. What could Feng Shu do? He knew that Chan Simiao would definitely not let go. He could only wave his hand and say, forget it. Who knows if your mystic technique will work? It's not wrong to not know, but later, during the discussion, fellow Taoist Chan will have to take half a step back. -11. Chapter 3175. He, Taoist priest Xiao. Xiao Hua laughed. A straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. Others may not know whether Taoist priest has cultivation or not, but how could I not know? What? You actually... Taoist priest Xiao turned pale with fright, almost jumping up. You were really sent by them? Who are they? Xiao Hua laughed. Taoist priest Xiao is too suspicious. Could it be that if you weren't sent by them, they wouldn't know that you have spiritual sense? Taoist priest Zhao's face turned ashen, but immediately after, his face showed ecstasy again. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Hua immediately waved his hand. Don't talk nonsense. You should first answer this Zhao's question. Yes. Taoist priest Xiao almost stuttered in his surprise. True essence condensing into a core is naturally the golden core realm that all Taoist disciples dream of. Other than this, what else is possible? Could it be? Taoist priest Xiao, oh no, Senior Xiao is already third-grade essence force? Third-grade essence force? Xiao Hua laughed. This Xiao wants it, but it doesn't want this Xiao. Do you think this Xiao is third-grade essence force? Xiao Hua's words were naturally ambiguous, but in a normal person's impression, Xiao Hua naturally admitted that he was not third-grade essence force. No, not possible. Taoist priest Xiao seemed to suddenly wake up at this time, shaking his head vigorously, trying to throw away his unrealistic delusions. Taoist priest Xiao has naturally terminated meridians. It's not possible for him to enter the Foundation establishment realm, not to mention consecration and fusion. But, finally, Taoist priest Xiao struggled like a drowning person grabbing onto a water plant, saying, but that bald donkey from the small gold temple is at most in the early stage of the benevolence realm. He can be considered a low first-grade essence force. If Taoist priest Xiao can enter the ranks, then you can defeat the Buddhist sect and expel that group of bald donkeys from Longevity Town. Taoist priest Xiao, are you in the ranks or not? Hee. Xiao Hua smiled slightly, turning around to leave, and said indifferently, this Xiao can be considered in the ranks. Looks like if this Xiao doesn't say it, you won't be able to sleep tonight. Ha. Taoist Xiao was overjoyed. He bowed and said, since Taoist Xiao is at the lower first rank, then the challenge in 10 days will depend on you. Xiao Hua flicked his sleeves and ignored Xiao Jian's bow. Xiao Jian seemed to be an unspeakably snobbish person. His attitude towards Xiao Hua changed several times. Xiao Hua originally had the cultivation of a Buddhist sect, so he only treated the fight between Shaojian Temple and Jiangchao Temple as a joke. However, the arrogant words of Shaojian Temple's monk Mingyu, who even proposed to expel Shaojian and Yuanya from Longevity Town, was not something Xiao Hua was willing to see. Therefore, this was also one of the reasons why Xiao Hua helped Shaojian. After all, Xiao Hua was also from the Tao sect. It was impossible for him to watch Taoism be expelled from Longevity Town by the Buddhist sect. Of course, 10 days was indeed a short period of time for Xiao Hua. It was impossible for him to completely clean out the earth crystal Yao milk in his meridians, dantian, and flesh. However, looking at Monk Mingyu's fat body and Yuan Ye's ability to fight 1 against 5, there was no reason why Xiao Hua couldn't sweep through Shaojian Temple's monks. As for Longevity Academy and the people Chansher Mingyu relied on, Xiao Hua didn't care about them at all. Even if he couldn't recover to his peak state, when facing some Foundation establishment or even Jindan stage cultivators, Xiaohua definitely wouldn't be at a disadvantage just by relying on some yellow and fire talismans. It was exactly as Xiaohua said. He indeed had the cultivation of a fourth-rank origin energy, but right now, his meridians and flesh were filled with earth crystal Yao milk. He couldn't use any divine abilities, so he really was just in the ranks. The three lonely and helpless Taoist cultivators of Jiang Chao Temple saw the light and were filled with hope for their future. One closed his eyes and meditated, one meditated and prayed for blessings, and one even laid down on the branch of a banyan tree, looking up at the stars in the night sky. It was unknown what he was thinking. Less than 5 li north of Longevity Town, there was a hill several li in size. Shaojin Temple, which was a dozen times larger than Jiangchao Temple, was built on top of this hill. At this moment, inside Shaojin Temple, the rhythmic sound of a wooden fish in the main hall was heard along with the loud and clear sound of a bell. The fat monk Mingyu, who was wearing a bright kasaya, put down the small wooden mallet in his hand. He looked at the 30-something people in the main hall with great satisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Today's evening class ends here. You all can go back and rest." "Yes, Abbot," the 30-something people replied in unison. It was very loud and resounding in the main hall, making Monk Mingyu even happier. After all the monks left, Monk Mingyu stood up, tidied up the kasaya on his body, and turned his head to look at the slightly old Shakyamuni Buddha statue in the main hall. He respectfully knelt down, kowtowed to the ground, and said in a low voice, "My Buddha, disciple Mingyu, has been in this Shaojian temple for more than 10 years. Previously, there were only 3 to 5 people in Shaojian temple, but now there are a lot of people, reaching 32. My Buddha must have seen disciples' hard work in these 10 years. Of course, disciples' hard work is incomparable to my Buddha's boundless dharma. The reason why Shaojin Temple is so prosperous is all because of my Buddha's mercy, and not because of disciples' hard work. Disciple is willing to take root in Longevity Town's Shaojian Temple, in this corner of hidden immortal continent, to plant my Buddha's mercy deep into the hearts of mortals, to let them know. In this world, there is only Buddha. Only Nirvana is their best home. Only by devoutly worshipping my Buddha can they get rid of evil, can they cut off evil. Ba. After that, Monk Mingyu softly muttered for a long time, kowtowed again, and respectfully retreated from the main hall. After Monk Mingyu returned to the abbot's meditation room, he changed his kasaya into a white monk robe. Pung pung. Someone knocked on the door of the meditation room. "Who is it?" Monk Mingyu frowned, feeling somewhat displeased. "Senior brother Mingyu. It's disciple Ming Fa." A respectful voice sounded from outside the door. Ba. So it's Ming Fa. Monk Mingyu's lips curled into an inexplicable smile. He walked to the front of the door and personally opened it. Ba. Senior brother is too polite. The one standing outside the door was the monk who followed behind Monk Mingyu in the afternoon. At this moment, he had a smile on his face, and his palms were clasped together as he said respectfully, "You only need to say the word, and disciple will enter. Why do you need to personally open the door?" "Junior brother Ming Fa, for you to come so late, there must be something extremely important." Monk Mingyu invited Ming Fa into the room and said with a smile, "To be able to rack your brains for my Shaojian temple, to be able to work tirelessly for the prosperity of my Buddhism sect, you are a meritorious servant of my Buddhism sect. This poor monk naturally has to personally open the door." "Thank you for your trouble, senior brother." Ming Fa sat on the praying mat somewhat cautiously. Monk Mingyu personally held the pot, poured a cup of tea, and then asked with a smile, "May I know what is the matter, junior brother?" -11. Chapter 3176. Reporting to senior brother, Mingfa picked up the tea, took a sip, and said, "Actually, it's nothing important. It's just that after finishing my homework, I returned to my room and thought of the challenge at the Temple of the River and Tide on the 10th day. I couldn't help but think of the situation 10 years ago when you came to the Shaojian Temple alone with a warning letter. Then I thought of the prosperity of the Shaojian Temple in the past 10 years. Now, even the Longevity Academy doesn't dare to look down on the Shaojian Temple. They took the initiative to exchange pointers with the Shaojian Temple on the day of the Immortal and Buddha ceremony. This This was something I didn't even dare to think about 10 years ago. Amiba, when I think of this, I can't sit still in my room. The development of the Shaojian Temple these years is all due to Senior Brother Abbot's contribution. Therefore, I came here to thank Senior Brother Abbot for the effort you put in for the Shaojian Temple. Amiba Mingfa's words obviously had a faint flattery, but in Zen Master Ming Yu's ears, it was very pleasing to the ear. Zen Master Ming Yu unconsciously chanted the name of Buddha and smiled. Junior Martial Brother Mingfa really knows this poor monk's heart. Just now, this poor monk was talking about the development of my Shaojian temple in the past 10 years in front of Buddha. I talked about how when this poor monk first came to Shaojian temple, there were only 2 junior martial brothers, Mingfa and Mingchan. I didn't expect junior brother to also be so emotional. It seems that our cultivation is still lacking. This heart of a dry well realm is still very far away. Amiba, my Buddha is merciful. Please forgive me for my unstable state of mind. Ming Fa hurriedly put his palms together and said very sincerely, Haha, junior brother Ming Fa. If Buddha sees that the small gold temple has become so prosperous in our hands, I'm afraid he won't punish you. Zen Master Ming Yu immediately curled his lips and said with a smile, For the Shaojian temple, for the Buddhism sect, I'm willing to accept Buddha's punishment. Ming Fa also said, Junior brother, please have some tea. Zen Master Ming Yu raised his cup and took a sip himself. He looked at the night sky outside the Zen door and sighed. Junior brother is right. Although we are Buddhists, we should have a pure heart and few desires. We should serve Buddha wholeheartedly. But in the end, we are just ordinary people. After all, we still have this stinky body. Seeing the Shaojian temple being so prosperous, how could we not be happy? How could he not be proud? Back then, when this old monk came to Small Gold Temple, the first person I paid my respects to was Immortal Academy's Zhu Junfeng. Although that Confucian Dean Zhu was very courteous to this old monk could tell from his disdainful gaze that he was rejecting my Buddhist sect. Yes, Senior Brother Abbot is right. In the 3 continents, other than the Western Paradise, which is the pure land of my Buddhist sect, the hidden immortal continent and the 1,000 demons sacred realm are not places that my Buddhist light shines upon. Within the 1,000 demons sacred territory, who knows how many disciples who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the development of our Buddhist sect have been buried in the mouths of demons. On the hidden immortal continent, there is the resistance of Confucian cultivators. The spread of our Buddhist sect's dharma has also been greatly hindered. We disciples of the Buddhist sect have a long way to go. Ming Fa nodded his head in agreement. That's right, junior brother Mingfa. This is the voice of millions of Buddhist sect disciples. We are not afraid of blood and tears. We are not afraid of difficulties. We just want to illuminate the entire 3 continents with Buddhist light. Zen Master Ming Yu's face showed a trace of redness. His eyes also flashed with fanaticism. Unfortunately, Ming Fa slightly clenched his teeth. The matters of this world are a test for us Buddhist disciples. In this small immortal town, not only does Immortal Academy have Ruo Tonglong tightly protecting their sphere of influence, even Taoism has revived from the ashes. A long time ago declined River Tide Temple, a wandering Taoist dares to go against my Small Gold Temple, challenging the dignity of my Buddhist sect. Hee, I won't hide it from junior brother. Zen Master Ming Yu said with a smile. Back then when this old monk saw that Taoist surname Zhao's face, I looked down on him from the bottom of my heart. What the hell? A scoundrel wants to challenge my Small Gold Temple in Immortal Town. Who does he think he is? Indeed, Ming Fa said with a smile. I remember the first time this old monk saw that so-called Taoist Xiao. He was no different from a beggar. However, this beggar-like person actually went against my Small Gold Temple in all aspects. Zen Master Ming Yu said with a sigh. If not for the fact that this River Tide Temple doesn't have many Taoist disciples, perhaps in these 3 to 4 years, that River Tide Temple really could catch up to my Small Gold Temple. This can't help but make me think of our Small Gold Temple back then. At that time, in Zhu Juanfeng's eyes, you and I probably weren't much different from this Taoist Xiao, right? Hee, how could it be that simple? My Buddhist sect's dharma is boundless. What does his Taoist sect have? It's nothing more than some tricks. It's fine to deceive ordinary people, but in front of us, it's just a joke. I believe that Immortal Academy knows all of this. The problem is, Zen Master Mingyu smiled bitterly. My small gold temple is entangled with River Tide Temple. So many years of pure reputation will turn into flowing water. Even if I can't see River Tide Temple clearly, how will the secular people of Immortal Town view my small gold temple? In the past, they compared small gold temple to Immortal Academy, but now, they want to compare small gold temple and River Tide Temple on the same level. At this point, Zen Master Mingyu said with some disappointment, I originally didn't want to say this. Yesterday, Minister Liu didn't even invite my small gold temple's monks. So why did Ming Fa Shidi insist on bringing a few disciples to Minister Liu's home? Although Minister Liu didn't want to embarrass small gold temple, so he gave half of the ritual to you. But can't you use your brain to think? How can my Buddhist sect's ritual be compared to Taoists? How can they be compared? Yes. Ming Fa's face showed some disapproval, but he still lowered his head and agreed. The most terrible thing is, Zen Master Ming, you didn't stop talking and continued to reprimand. After the ritual, you actually had a conflict with River Tide Temple. You and your group of close to 10 people against River Tide Temple's 2 people. If others knew, it would be strange if my small gold temple wasn't laughed to death. Senior Abbot, I know I was wrong. Ming Fa had no choice but to lower his head and explain. It wasn't that I insisted on going to Minister Liu's home to fight with River Tide Temple for the ritual. It was that this ritual was agreed upon the last time Minister Liu came to my small gold temple to worship Buddha. Who knows what Taoist Xiao said to Minister Liu? I'm afraid he sowed discord and said that my small gold temple was in the wrong. That was why Minister Liu was persuaded to invite River Tide Temple over. I only went to Minister Liu's home as agreed, but I only bumped into River Tide Temple, and Minister Liu also said it clearly. He was careless and mixed up the matter. Sigh, forget it. 10 days later, this kind of thing won't happen again. Shitty, you have to take this as a lesson and never let it happen again. Zen Master Mingyu sighed and didn't want to pursue the matter. Senior Abbot, 10 days later. Which Shirshu will be coming? Why will he come? Ming Fa's eyes lit up and asked curiously. If I'm not wrong, it should be Yunlin Temple's Shirshu Xinghai. Speaking of Xinghai, Zen Master Mingyu's eyes lit up, as if he was envious and jealous. It was a rare look. Senior Abbot, Ming Fa was even more curious and hurriedly said, didn't you come from Yunlin Temple? 10 years ago, you were entrusted with an important task and came to my small gold temple. Then you must be familiar with Shirshu Xinghai. What kind of expert is he? Hee. Zen Master Mingyu laughed and said, my Yunlin temple has thousands of monks. Although they are all devoted to Buddha, they all have their own responsibilities. Shirshu Xinghai is my Buddhist protector and has Buddhist supernatural powers. How can I know him? I have only seen Shirshu Xinghai a few times on some occasions. Speaking of Buddhist supernatural powers, Senior Abbot, you have to explain it to Shidi. Ming Fa's eyes were even more fervent. For us small gold temple Buddhas, other than Shidi who came from Yunlin Temple, we all entered Buddhism from small gold temple. We are really ignorant. By the way, although the monks of small gold temple have practiced some martial arts in order to protect the temple, they are still far from Yuanya of Jiangchao Temple. If we all practice Buddhist supernatural powers, who would be afraid of a wandering Taoist? When Zen Master Mingyu heard this, a hint of awkwardness flashed across his face. He put his palms together and said, Junior Brother Ming Fa, fighting and killing should be the responsibility of the Buddhist guardians. We only need to spread the Buddhist Dharma and teach the ordinary people to be good. Senior Brother. Ming Fa smiled bitterly. The problem is that our small gold temple doesn't have a protector. If we had one, would we still be afraid of Yuanya of Jiangchao Temple? Even if there was that old Taoist and that young Taoist who just appeared today, I don't think we need to be afraid. Speaking of this, Ming Fa said with some hatred, I think that Taoist Xiao wants to get back last night's embarrassment, so he challenged our small gold temple in public. He thinks that we can't deal with Yuanya alone. He wants to laugh at our small gold temple. Hee. He really didn't expect that Senior Brother Abbot would take advantage of the situation to propose a competition in 10 days. He even proposed that whoever loses would leave Longevity Town, forcing him to a dead end. He lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. How can we compare to Martial Uncle Xinghai's cultivation? Ba. Zen Master Mingyu chanted. I was also stunned by Daoist Zhao's anger this afternoon and lost my cool. That's why I proposed that bet. Actually, now that I think about it, Daoist Zhao came later. His existence doesn't matter at all. Whether he is here or not, Zhangshao Temple is still a broken Daoist temple. On the contrary, our small gold temple is in a disadvantageous position. If Martial Uncle Xinghai didn't come and it was someone else, there might really be a problem. Then what should we do? Ming Fa was also shocked and said anxiously. Zen Master Mingyu smiled. Of course, then again, even if Martial Uncle Xinghai didn't come, Yunlin Temple will send a Martial Uncle of the Transcendence Realm. That Yuanya is definitely not his opponent. You and I can rest assured. -11. Chapter 3177. Chan Simiao smiled apologetically and said, Hee, that's easy. If it's not something important, why can't I take a step back? Zhang Xiaohua saw that the two of them didn't avoid her and only treated her as an object. She also knew that her life wasn't in danger. Zhang Xiaohua sat on the ground and stared straight at Xiu Feng's magic tool. She didn't know what he was thinking. After a while, Feng Shu said, How about this, fellow Daoist Chan? I have an idea, but I don't know if it's suitable. Feng Shu, please tell me. I'm all ears. Yes, this cauldron is the last resort for us to get through the heavenly tribulation. If we all get through the heavenly tribulation safely, we won't need this cauldron. So, I was thinking, instead of fighting over this cauldron now, why don't we put it away first? Chan Simiao's eyes lit up and he nodded. That's right. We're only in the middle stage of the soul formation stage. There's still some time before we pass the minor tribulation. Why should we fight to the death now? Why don't we use it when we pass the minor tribulation in the future? Also, if fellow Daoist Chan successfully passes the tribulation, we won't have to fight over it, right? Feng Shu flattered him. Hee, thank you for your kind words. Chan Simiao smiled and said, Also, although our cultivation levels are similar, we won't pass the tribulation at the same time. How about this, let's make an agreement. Whoever passes the tribulation first gets to use the cauldron first. If the person who passes the tribulation first succeeds, the cauldron will be given to the person who passes the tribulation later. What do you think? Hee, very good. I like it. Feng Shu clapped his hands and said, It's decided then. However, when he looked at Zhang Xiaohua, Feng Shu frowned and said, We can make an agreement like this in the future, but what about now? This old man originally planned to let this guy go to my Immortal Ascension sect first. After this old man is done with the Imperial Demon Valley, I will take him in as a disciple and use my sect's cultivation method to cultivate him. In the future, when I possess his body, he will have a good foundation. Chan Simiao was also in a difficult position. According to his thoughts, naturally, he also wanted to get Zhang Xiaohua into his Immortal Music sect and use the Immortal Music sect's cultivation techniques to cultivate her. In the future, when he wanted to possess her, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Of course, at this moment, it didn't matter who took Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua was doomed. But how could they let the other party take her? Why don't we find another sect and let him stay there? Feng Shu suggested. Don't. Chan Simiao shook his head like a rattle drum. As long as such a good cauldron is placed in Dawn Rain Continent, all the cultivators who are about to transcend their tribulations will definitely fight over it. We absolutely can't let any sect know about it. Of course, Chan Simiao did not say one more thing. Who knows what the other sects have to do with you? If you did something, how would I know? Perhaps even if I was the first to use the cauldron, I would still fall into your trap. At this point, this train of thought had no meaning to continue discussing it. The two of them did not trust each other, so how could they be at ease with other sects? The two of them stood facing each other quietly. After a long while, Chan Simiao urged, Fellow Taoist Feng, could it be that there's no other way? Could it be That we're going to imprison this guy somewhere? Or let this guy cultivate alone in Dawn Rain Continent? Feng Shu's eyes lit up. He clapped and said, fellow Daoist Chan is right. Why can't we? Where does fellow Daoist Feng want to imprison this guy? Chan Simiao was slightly stunned. It's not good to imprison him. After all, this cauldron is someone we want to possess in the future. Imprison him for a long time will be detrimental to our future development. Fellow Daoist Feng, don't tell me you're going to throw him to Dawn Rain Continent. Chan Simiao said in disbelief. If he's discovered by others, how can we still have a chance? Fellow Daoist Chan, have you forgotten that the big hide in the city and the small hide in the wilderness? Even if you imprison this guy somewhere, he'll still be discovered by others. Furthermore, there will be many chances of him being discovered. Why don't you just let him cultivate in Dawn Rain Continent? There are countless cultivators in Dawn Rain Continent. Who would recognize such a lowly cultivator? Furthermore, if the two of us join hands to restrict this guy's middle dantian, who else would be able to discover it other than cultivators above the void refinement realm? How could such an insignificant cultivator be discovered by a cultivator with a higher cultivation base than us? Even if this guy's aptitude is very good. But there's no need to wait until then. You and I can transcend the minor heavenly tribulation, right? Fellow Daoist Feng is indeed wise. Chan Simiao clapped again. However, he immediately felt bewildered. If this guy doesn't have our guidance and only starts from Qi refinement realm, I'm afraid his lifespan won't be enough. Feng Shu smiled bitterly. Could it be that fellow Daoist Chan has a better idea? If fellow Daoist Chan is still worried, why don't you let me bring him back to the immortal sect? Of course, Chan Simiao shook his head. Then, Feng Shu whispered a few words to Chan Simiao. Chan Simiao was shocked at first. He turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua and nodded slightly. If fellow Daoist Feng thinks so, then I can only agree. Then Feng Shu said again, since that's the case, the two of us will swear a hard oath. From today onwards, the two of us will never reveal this matter to anyone, including our own disciples. Furthermore, no disciple of the Immortal Ascension sect or the Immortal Music sect can give this guy any guidance. Wherever this guy goes, where he lives, whether he cultivates or not, it has nothing to do with us. Yes, that means that before we transcend the minor heavenly tribulation, we are absolutely forbidden to have any contact with this guy. Only when one of us transcends the heavenly tribulation can we appear together to capture this guy. Yes, if you and I want to do anything to this guy, we must discuss it with the other party. Only when both of us agree and both of us are present at the same time can we do anything. Also, if this guy is discovered by others, we must take action at the same time to cover up this matter. No matter what method we use, we must kill that guy. But what if it's an old ghost who's transcending the heavenly tribulation? Then forget it. Let's preserve our lives first. Also, what if there's any change in this guy? This is not possible, right? It's better to be safe than sorry. Fellow Taoist, let's make this clear first. All right, if there's any change, we can investigate it. However, if one of us goes, we must inform the other. Neither of us can go looking for this bastard alone. I'll say the same thing again. This matter must not be known by others. All right, we'll do as fellow Taoist Feng says. Seeing that the two of them were almost done discussing, Chan Simiao thought for a moment and nodded his head in agreement. Then, the two of them dripped a drop of blood and mixed it together. In front of this drop of blood, they made a heart oath and pointed at the drop of blood. The drop of blood split into two and turned into two strange runes that flew to their foreheads and disappeared. Fellow Taoist Chan, it's time for you to use your secret technique. Seeing that they had made a heart oath, Feng Shu pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and said indifferently, the memories of the past few days shouldn't be left behind. Well said. Chan Simiao stretched out his hand and 10,000 broken fireflies flew out. Zhang Xiaohua flew into the air with the broken fireflies. In the hands of a soul formation cultivator, Zhang Xiaohua was like an ant. He had no power to fight back. The moment the broken fireflies fell on him, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt a kind of sadness. The sadness of being a fish on a chopping block, the sadness of being an ant. This sadness didn't decrease even as his consciousness gradually blurred. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's ashen expression, Feng Shu wasn't surprised. He looked around and waved his hand. The storage ring flew into his hand and disappeared. The bag and strange-shaped magic tools on the ground also disappeared. Even Zhang Xiaohua's clothes were taken by Feng Shu. Then, Feng Shu said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Hee, little guy, I wanted you to raise him like a pig, but now I have no choice but to raise him like a sheep. Your fate was already decided when you saw us. Of course, it's not like you don't have any chances now. First, you can pray to the heavens and ask the heavens to reduce the heavenly lightning when fellow Taoist Chan and I transcend the tribulation so that we can safely transcend it. Fellow Taoist Chan and I promise you that as long as we transcend the lightning tribulation, we will immediately release you. Second, you can also cultivate diligently. As long as you transcend the tribulation before us, don't worry, we don't have to do anything. The small heavenly tribulation from the soul formation will definitely destroy this restriction." Zhang Xiaohua only listened in a daze. His eyes were straight, as if there was no spirit in them. Or you can do what you did just now. You don't want your life and self-destruct. Turn around and reincarnate. Feng Shu ignored his reaction and continued. "However, this old man has to remind you that if you disintegrate, the restriction that Chan Simiao and I placed in your dantian will immediately alert us, and we will immediately rush over. Before your corpse turns cold, we will do something else to ensure that we can use it when we go through the tribulation. Of course, this is under the condition that you know who you are and remember what happened today." Feng Shu seemed to still be saying something, but Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness was already blurred. It was as if he had fallen into a gray space. There was no possession, no furnace, no pain, no sadness. Fellow Taoist Feng. Seeing Xiaohua standing in the air with an expressionless face, Chan Simiao smiled and said, "I was fortunate enough to not disappoint you. Now that it's time to seal it, I wonder if fellow Taoist will make a move first? Or will I make a move first?" You and I will make a move at the same time." Feng Shu smiled faintly. "Just now, I thought of something. It seems that your immortal music sect and my immortal ascension sect both have half of the incomplete heaven and earth dual forms devil sealing formation, right? Fellow Taoist Chan, don't tell me that you haven't studied it properly." "Ha ha ha," Chan Simiao laughed and clapped his hands. "I also have the same idea. If we use this incomplete immortal formation to seal this guy, even void refinement realm cultivators or even higher cultivators won't be able to break it." Not only that, a trace of ruthlessness flashed through Feng Shu's eyes. "Not only do you and I want to seal this guy's middle dantian, we also want to seal his Naiwan palace so that he can't cultivate normally. Furthermore, fellow Taoist Chan has the advantage in the middle dantian seal while I has the advantage in the Naiwan palace seal. These two seals are connected by the heaven and earth dual forms devil sealing formation. Even if the old ghost Du Jie comes to break the seal and take over this guy's body, we will make him suffer. All right, let's do as fellow Taoist Feng says." Chan Simiao laughed loudly and waved his hands. Countless mysterious spells were cast one after another. Countless hurricanes rushed into his hands from 100 li in the sky and gradually drew countless white brilliance. At the same time, Feng Shu did the same. Wherever he waved his spells, countless black brilliance was also produced. For a moment, the color of heaven and earth changed. Rumble. Thunder faintly appeared in the sky. It was as if the heavens were mourning for Xiao Hua, who had just stepped into the dawn rain continent and hadn't seriously looked at the beautiful scenery around him. Boom! After an extremely loud sound, countless air waves rushed in all directions. Seeing the two layers of black and white seals fused together and entering Xiao Hua's Naiwan Palace and Middle Dantian without any obstruction, Chan Simiao and Feng Shu raised their heads and looked at each other with a dignified expression. At the same time, they raised their hands. A white brilliance like a silk was drawn out from Xiao Hua's Middle Dantian and swam extremely slowly toward the Naiwan Palace. At the same time, a black brilliance like a black line was produced in the Naiwan Palace and welcomed the white silk. Even the avatars of the two spirit-severing cultivators were extremely solemn at this time. Their gazes were fixed on the black and white silk and didn't dare to be negligent. The strange thing was that the two gossamers were like ants. Every time they swam an inch, the void seemed to be about to collapse. Every time they swam an inch, the two avatars also became a bit dimmer. It seemed that at this time, even the two avatars couldn't support this immortal seal. Woo! The moment the two gossamers touched, a mournful wail like a ghost and a howl like a wolf suddenly appeared. A strong fluctuation followed. The two gossamers instantly turned gray and entered Zhang Xiaohua's body. It quickly rushed in all directions. The wind and clouds in the sky changed again. This seal actually triggered a celestial phenomenon. Shua. Thousands of crystal lights burst out from the two avatars. The avatars of the two spirit-severing cultivators, Chan Si Miao and Feng Shu, rapidly dimmed and then turned into specks of light and disappeared in midair. Rumble. Wherever the fluctuation passed, countless lightning flashed and thunder roared from the sky. There was also a torrential downpour. It was as if the heavens were crying, and also as if the heavens were angry. Following the thunderstorm, Zhang Xiaohua's naked body fell from the sky. Two sparkling tears hung from the corners of his eyes. It was unknown whether they were tears of the heavens or his own tears. The rain continued for several days, and the lightning flashed in the sky for several days. It was impossible for the anger to not have an end. When the anger had no target to vent, the clouds gradually parted and the rain stopped. A seven-colored rainbow hung in the sky like a giant opened eye, revealing a strong sense of pity. Under the eyebrows of the giant eye, a black dot gradually got closer. When it got closer, it was a magic treasure that looked like a small boat flying over. However, the strange thing was that there was no one on the magic treasure. It seemed to be an ownerless magic treasure. However, when the magic treasure flew over a mountain stream, the light of the setting sun reflected on the magic treasure. A cultivator in a green Taoist robe suddenly sat up from the magic treasure. That's right, he sat up and even stretched his back. The cultivator looked at the sunlight reflected on the mountain peak and smacked his lips. Sigh. I just closed my eyes and another day has passed. Time is too short. At this point, the cultivator had already stood up. He tidied his Taoist robe and muttered to himself, "This old man has been waiting outside the valley for so long, but I still haven't snatched anything good. Why did all the spirit stones in the world run into other people's pockets? Why didn't a single piece run into this Zhao's storage bag? Don't tell me I have to return to Yellow Flower Ridge empty-handed again today?" The cultivator said in a bored tone as he looked around. The rain from before was really heavy, and the mountain stream was full of flowing water. The water in the stream was very muddy, and it flowed everywhere. On both sides of the mountain stream, many small trees and branches were blown down by the strong wind. Many mountain rocks were also shattered by the lightning, rolling down from the top of the mountain. The mountain peak was in a mess. Io, is this a person? A white flower suddenly appeared from the dark green leaves and was reflected in the cultivator's eyes. The cultivator cried out involuntarily. Wasn't this white flower person the seal Zhang Xiaohua? She just rushed into the mountain stream along with the heavy rain. This person is actually still alive. The cultivator landed and immediately discovered with his divine sense. He couldn't help but frown. If she's dead, it's easy to deal with. I can just bury her. But this person, forget it. Let's bring her back to Yellow Flower Ridge first. After waking her up, we'll send her down the mountain. Immediately, the cultivator took out a Taoist robe from his storage bag and casually draped it over Zhang Xiaohua's body. He carried her onto the flying boat. The flying boat rushed into the sky and quickly left. Zhang Xiaohua's story in Dawn Rain Continent was spread out along with the flying boat. -11. Chapter 3178. That's good. Ming Fa heaved a sigh of relief and asked again, "Senior brother, what is the transcendence realm that you mentioned?" "I don't know much, so I'll answer your questions today." Hearing Ming Fa's question, Zen Master Ming Yu had no choice but to answer. "When I was in Yunlin Temple, I occasionally chatted with Martial Uncle while he was preaching about Tao. We talked about the 9 realms of Buddhism's supernatural powers. What 9 realms? Ming Fa couldn't help but ask. I only know the 4 realms of benevolence, transcendence, Ru Go, and Ming Jin. Zen Master Ming Yu answered. Martial Uncle never mentioned the other 5 realms, so I don't know either. Martial Uncle Xing Hai is only in the transcendence realm? If it's Ru Go and Ming Jin, how powerful would they be? Ming Fa asked enviously. Oh, right, Senior Brother Abbot. You? Didn't I say it earlier? We are different from Buddhism's Dharma protectors, so we don't have to emphasize on cultivation realms. Zen Master Mingyu smiled. We only need to exhaust our energy to serve Buddha, and when we have enough merit, we can attain Buddha fruit. That's the best outcome. Sigh. How can it be easy to attain Buddha fruit in Buddhism's 7 realms? However, the sapphire Buddha fruit would probably require tens of thousands of merit points, not to mention the supremacy, Heavenly King, Golden Gang, Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha. This penniless monk does not even know how much merit points would be required to obtain the Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha. According to what I know, Zen Master Mingyu hesitated and said softly, some Buddha fruits can't be attained in a lifetime, but in 2 or even 9 lifetimes. SK. So difficult. Ming Fa took a deep breath and said angrily, previously, I was ignorant and thought that Buddha fruit was Buddhism's supernatural powers, but after hearing Senior Brother Abbot's words, there's a huge difference. Don't be discouraged, Junior Brother Ming Fa. Speaking of the supernatural powers of Buddhism, I've been practicing for more than 10 years, but I've only just stepped into the realm of benevolence. If I want to cultivate benevolence to perfection and enter the dust realm, I'm afraid it's impossible in this lifetime. Zen Master Ming Yu encouraged Ming Fa. However, we have spread the Dharma in the longevity town and revitalized the Buddhist sect. With the accumulation of merit, it's not impossible for us to attain the indigo Buddha fruit in this lifetime. Yes, I understand. Ming Fa put his palms together and lowered his head. Buddha is merciful. Buddhism is widely spread. Regardless of whether it is the cultivation of divine abilities or the accumulation of merit, it will pave the path to heaven under the feet of us bodhisattvas. This disciple is willing to make the indigo Buddha fruit my lifelong pursuit. I will give my everything to Buddha Tathagata. Excellent. Zen Master Ming Yu also pressed his palms together and said with a smile, Junior Brother, you are so ambitious. You will definitely be able to attain Buddhist enlightenment. I'm very gratified. Disciple thanks Senior Brother Abbot for clearing my doubts tonight. Ming Fa stood up and thanked him. Disciple will take his leave now. Yes, Junior Brother Ming Fa. The Immortal Buddhist ceremony in 10 days will be the first for our Shaojian temple. You must not make any mistakes. Start preparing from tomorrow onwards. Zen Master Ming Yu stood up and instructed. Yes, I understand. Senior Brother Abbot, please rest assured. Ming Fa agreed and slowly left the meditation room. Sigh. Competing with the Jiangshao Temple is really an unfair victory. I wonder if Martial Uncle Xing Hai will agree. Looking at Ming Fa's departing figure, Zen Master Ming Yu sighed. However, I don't think he will watch us get chased away by the Taoist priests of the Jiangshao Temple, right? The 2 monks of the Shaojian Temple were thinking about the Buddhist challenge in 10 days and preparing for the Immortal Buddhist ceremony that was held once every 10 years. On the west side of the longevity town, in the Longevity Academy, which was several times larger than the Shaojian Temple, the sound of reading resounded from the academy, resonating in the night sky. Following the sound of reading, wisps of faint mist danced in the night sky. Also, traces of undetectable brilliance slowly scattered, enveloping the entire academy. Within the brilliance, in a corner of the academy, beside a lush bamboo forest, a disdainful voice reprimanded from within a small and exquisite library, Jun Feng, you are a little reckless. The Immortal Buddhist ceremony can be lively, but it is only held in our Longevity Academy. Why did you drag the Shaojin Temple into it? A small temple actually wants to stir up trouble in the Longevity Town. Why don't you take a look at the morals of these monks? Haha, Mr. Tian, you worry too much. Following this voice, another voice sounded in the library. It was Zhu Junfeng, Dean Zhu of the Longevity Academy. He held the fist-sized lamp on the desk and looked at the white-haired but hale and hearty thin old man in front of him. He smiled and said, "I just happened to be returning from a walk outside the town with a group of scholars. When I heard about the bet between the Shaojin Temple and the 3 Taoist priests of the Jiangqiao Temple, I felt it was funny. That's why I spoke. I wanted to let them know that in the Longevity Town, only the Longevity Academy counts. Whether it is the Shaojin Temple or the Jiangqiao Temple, they are jackals of the same tribe. Yes, I just feel that competing with the Shaojin Temple and celebrating the immortal Buddhist ceremony is beneath the dignity of the Academy. It's not that I am dissatisfied with your arrangement." Mr. Tai nodded and said, "If we can use the immortal Buddhist ceremony to suppress the arrogance of the Shaojian Temple, that would be great." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Zhu Junfeng explained. "In the past few decades, the Buddhism sect has been wantonly spreading Buddhism in the hidden immortal continent and the Thousand Demons sacred realm. Although this doesn't violate the public opinion of the 3 continents, they have been brazenly establishing temples and sending some ignorant people into Buddhism. This has affected the rule of the Confucian cultivators in the hidden immortal continent. I used the immortal Buddhist ceremony to make the Shaojian Temple suffer. This is also a blow to them, and let them know when to stop. Don't be greedy. The Buddhism sect has big plans. We Confucian cultivators are already vigilant." Mr. Tai frowned. "The Buddhism sect has been building temples in the hidden immortal continent and spreading Buddhism to the point where it can't be suppressed. However, we Confucian cultivators have been building academies in the Western Paradise and teaching students. Progress is slow. The Buddhist people in the Western Paradise are very ignorant. It's hard to use benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faith to teach them well. Even if it's difficult, we have to face it. Otherwise, how can we go up and down to seek?" Zhu Junfeng was also somewhat worried. "However, from what I saw today, the Shaojian Temple has been unscrupulous in order to destroy the Jiangqiao Temple. The Buddhism sect's intention of eliminating dissidents is really scary. It's far from our Confucian cultivators' breadth of mind." "That's right. That abbot of the Shaojian Temple called Monk Mingyu obviously had the confidence to win. He was sure that after 10 days, there would be a Buddhist expert who defeated Yuanya. That's why he restrained himself and pushed the challenge 3 days later to 10 days later. He even used leaving the Longevity Town as bait to trick Taoist Shao of the Jiangqiao Temple. His methods are really despicable." -11. Chapter 3179. Poor Taoists. The Immortals and Buddha's ceremony is in 10 days. Although Longevity Academy won't make a move, they will disappear from Longevity Town under the pressure of the Buddhist sect. Mr. Tai couldn't help but lament the fate of the Rivertide Temple. "Who says Chongqing Academy won't do anything?" Zhu Junfeng smiled. "Since Mr. Jinli is here, don't go back empty-handed. No matter what Buddhist masters come from Shaojian Temple, let Mr. Mo do it. Let them see what the Confucian cultivators of Zhongxian continent are like." "Oh, Mr. Mo Yen is coming?" Mr. Tai was surprised. "I haven't seen Mr. Mo for years. Why did he come to Chongqing Town?" Mr. Tai said proudly, "Mr. Mo is young but mature. He is a famous scholar of Chongyun sect. Isn't it like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken?" Hearing Mr. Tai's question, Zhu Junfeng's smile faded slightly, and he frowned slightly. He was also puzzled. Not to mention Mr. Tai, even I am puzzled. The Longevity Town is just a small part of the country of Shi. Our Longevity Academy is just one of the hundreds of academies in the country of Shi. 15 years ago, because of the appearance of a fox demon in Mount Cheng, the sect sent Mr. Lu Tinghan to eliminate the demon. I passed by the Longevity Town and stayed for half a day. Since then, no other scholars have passed by here. Even if there are disciples of the sect who want to cross Liao River, they come from Jishun Town. Very few of them come to Chongqing Academy. Mr. Jinli's arrival is very sudden. Didn't the sect say anything else?" Mr. Tai didn't believe him. "Oh, Mr. Jinli." Zhu Junfeng pretended to exaggerate. "Sir is a senior elder of my Longevity Academy. Before this little one came to Longevity Town, Longevity Academy was managed by Sir alone. If the sect has information, How could this little one dare hide it from Sir? Ha ha ha, Mr. Tai, and laughed heartily. He stroked his beard and shook his head. I'm just curious. If you don't want to tell me, I won't ask. Whoosh. At this moment, a green sword light flashed in the night sky outside the library. It cut through the open window and rushed in front of them. Who is it? Zhu Junfeng didn't have time to check what the sword light was. He turned his head abruptly and looked out of the window. His originally black and white eyes flashed with a faint, clear light. Zhu Junfeng used the greenwood eyes of a Confucian cultivator to examine the situation around Longevity Academy. Mr. Tai waved his hand, and a ball of true qi flew out from his sleeve, instantly turning into a dozen or so strands to surround the sword light. Within the true qi, the sword light suddenly converged. It was a thumb-sized green flying sword. Mr. Tai opened his mouth and infused his true qi into the flying sword. The surface of the flying sword immediately began to roll like water. Gradually, something similar to a bamboo joint emerged from the flying sword. Principal Zhu. The vigilance on Mr. Tai's face faded. He smiled. This is a flying sword message from the sect. Try using Longevity Academy's sword comprehension technique. Zhu Junfeng used his greenwood eyes to observe for a moment. There was nothing strange within a few miles of the Chongqing Academy. He knew that the sword light must be a message from the sect. He nodded and formed a sword sign with his hands. When a few streams of Zhen Qi rushed into the bamboo joint like flying swords, the bamboo joint slowly opened. A clear voice came from the bamboo joint. Zhu Yin, I am Imo Jinli from the sect. I am now on the Liao River, which is more than 15 miles south of the Chongqing Academy. I have something to ask you. As Imo Jinli's voice faded, the bamboo joint slowly dissipated. Then, it turned back into a thumb-sized sword. Mr. Imo. Zhu Junfeng reached out and the sword landed in his hand. He carefully examined the sect insignia on the sword. He couldn't help but frown. He looked at Mr. Tai and asked curiously, How did he get here so quickly? Last time, the message said that he would come to Longevity Academy in about 6 days. Moreover, why did he go to Liao River instead of coming to Longevity Academy so late at night? Could it be that his main purpose of coming here today is Liao River? Haha, since Mr. Imo is here, why don't we go and ask him? Why bother guessing? Mr. Tai said with a smile. When Zhu Junfeng heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Haha, exactly. Tonight, the sky is clear and the stars are like lanterns. I really want to go to the Silver Han Dynasty with Mr. Tai. We'll play the stars and welcome the guests from afar. That's right. I want to go with you. Mr. Tai was in high spirits. He shook his hand, and a jade pendant flew into the air like an auspicious cloud. Then, he opened his mouth and breathed in a puff of true qi. The jade pendant flashed with a faint white light. Then, it turned into an auspicious cloud several feet in size and floated in front of Mr. Tai. Mr. Tai raised his leg and stepped on it. The cloud rose into the air and rushed out of the library. Mr. Tai's robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. Mr. Tai's auspicious cloud pendant is indeed marvelous. It's not something an ordinary origin artifact can compare to. Zhu Junfeng's eyes flashed with a divine light as he praised. He extended his hand, and his index and middle fingers came together to form a sword seal. Rise, following Zhu Junfeng's soft command, a wong sound of a sword rang out. The treasured sword hanging on the wall of the library flew out of its scabbard, and like a silver dragon, it streaked across the air and rushed past Zhu Junfeng. Zhu Junfeng nimbly leaped onto it, and the treasured sword did not stop there either. It also rushed out of the library. In the sky above the library, other than the sound of students reading, Mr. Tai's voice could also be heard. The building is 100 feet high, and the stars can be plucked with one hand. I don't dare to speak loudly for fear of alarming the people in the sky. Haha. Zhu Junfeng heard this and laughed inwardly. Mr. Tai is in high spirits today. I'm afraid that Mr. Imo Jinli has inspired him. Mr. Tai has spent his entire life practicing the classics. Today, He has only reached the middle stage of transforming energy into chi. He is only a scholar. Mr. Mo, on the other hand, has practiced the noble spirit river. He is only in his 50s and has already reached the last stage of transforming energy into chi. He has become the youngest scholar in the Chongyun sect. Facing a child who once wanted to learn from him, no one would be able to remain calm. Sigh, where do saints come from in this world? The desire to win has never ceased. If Mr. Tai and is like this, how can others be spared? Fortunately, although I am a young scholar, I am still much younger than Mr. Mo. Facing such a prodigy, how can I live with my dignity? Zhu Junfeng stood on his flying sword, looking like a sword immortal. He was even more graceful than Mr. Tai. Mr. Tai and's high spirits had already attracted the attention of countless students. When Zhu Junfeng flew out, it caused a stir. Strong, quiet as a virgin, moving as a rabbit, using chi to control the sword, moving unhindered between heaven and earth. This is my life's pursuit. A few students with delicate features could not help but clench their fists and sigh. I am willing to use my heart to strike the sky. I am willing to use my pure heart to cover the 9 provinces. I am willing to use the righteous energy of heaven and earth to destroy all demons and monsters in the world. Some students even sighed in the sky. However, more students were still whispering to each other. Since the headmaster has such a cultivation, if we work hard and train hard, we will definitely be able to win first place in the annual competition. Only then will we have the opportunity to enter the sect to cultivate. Only then will we be able to fulfill our ambitions. Our wish to sweep the world with our swords and cover the 9 provinces will come true. That's right. It's better to retreat and form a net than to admire the fish in the abyss. Of course, I won't lie to you. As they spoke, some students woke up from the chaos. They picked up their books and began to study word by word. Not long after, wisps of clear energy filled the entire academy, becoming denser and denser. Outside Longevity Town, night had already fallen. The fog of dusk only began to slowly recede at this time. The Liao River, which was dozens of li wide, was currently emitting hua-hua sounds of water. Under the bright moon, it flowed endlessly towards the east. The moonlight was like frost, sprinkling specks of water on the river. From time to time, fist-sized splashes would rise up and then turn into fireflies in the air. Occasionally, large whirlpools would appear in the rapid flow of the river. The dried branches and leaves floating on the river surface would all be sucked into the water. Although it was already late at night, under the moonlight, the Liao River seemed to be as bright as day. Not to mention the huge ships in the middle of the river from time to time. They could see the dozens of small boats fishing at the river's edge. It wasn't just the huge boats. Under the moonlight, it was the time for the fish to swim upstream. Tens of thousands of small fish were like notes jumping around in the waves. They jumped and attacked the water, going against the current, unwilling to go with the flow. It was a scene full of vitality, a scene of people wanting to fight against fate. Unfortunately, on the dozens of small boats, there were some middle-aged men who wanted to take advantage of the night to go upstream and catch more fish to feed their families and buy more clothes for their children. Looking at the nets cast time and time again on the small boats, there were also heavy shouts and joyous laughter. Although they were tired, their harvest was bountiful. On the other hand, those fishes who wanted to change their fate would immediately fall into the nets of others as soon as they jumped up from the river surface. Other than becoming the meal of others tomorrow, there was no other ending. What bravery, what change, what unyielding will, they all turned into the moon's shadow in the river. Woo! Without any reason, a gust of cold wind suddenly rushed out from the river. A few seemingly ordinary waves rose up with a whoosh, immediately capsizing several small boats nearby. The river surface that didn't seem dangerous suddenly became a whirlpool. Nearly 10 people on the small boats fell into it and were immediately sucked into the whirlpool. There was almost no time to call for help. On the contrary, not far away, the fishermen who were celebrating their harvest inadvertently saw this and no longer cared about fishing. They shouted loudly, urging their family members who were trying their best to stabilize the small boats. They ignored the whirlpool on the river surface and rowed towards the small boats that were spinning rapidly in the whirlpool. There were even a few fishermen who didn't even think and jumped into the river, wanting to save the nearly 10 fishermen who had already disappeared. -11. Chapter 3180. These fishermen might not be familiar with each other, but since they were still boating in the middle of the night, they knew that they were all people who worked hard. If they could lend a helping hand, no one would be stingy. How could their honest and upright hearts think more than that? Since those fishermen did not surface from the river, how much stronger could they be? But the strange thing was that these fishermen were much more agile than the upstream fish in the river. In a short moment, they had already neared the numerous large whirlpools. However, the moment the fishermen touched the whirlpools, they immediately sank into the water and did not show their heads again. It was as though they had never appeared in the first place. This time, the numerous fishermen who had rushed over from behind turned pale with fright. They hurriedly screamed and fled towards the shore with all their might. Unfortunately, it was already a little too late. The numerous large whirlpools were like huge mouths that could devour people. They were getting bigger and faster, moving towards these people. Help? The heart-wrenching cries for help could not travel far on the surging river surface. Not to mention the sound of splashing water. Even the sound of thousands of fish falling into the water could drown out these cries. Just at this critical moment, a rumbling sound of flowing water suddenly appeared in the distant night sky. This flow of water was as continuous as the river water, but it also seemed to be more imposing than the sound of the river water. It was simply like a waterfall that washed down from the cliff, following the sound of flowing water. Another voice that was full of energy and even more powerful than the rolling waves sounded. Hold on for a moment. This MO will save you all. Looking at the source of the voice, a long river that was like the Milky Way descended from the 9 heavens. On the long river, there was a scholar who stepped on a crimson cloud. He was dressed in a white scholarly robe and was flying over on a sword. Help! How could the numerous fishermen who had half of their bodies in the whirlpool care to look at the immortal's grace? They hurriedly shouted for help. Speaking of which, it was strange. When the scholar's voice sounded, the whirlpool on the river surface immediately weakened. Although the fishermen's bodies were spinning uncontrollably in the whirlpool, they did not immediately fall into the river like before. In a short moment, the scholar had already landed on top of the fishermen's heads. The scholar's thick eyebrows and his face was full of tranquility. Although he was facing the life and death of several people, his thin lips were tightly shut and there was no sign of panic. Go! The scholar waved his hand and a brocade silk handkerchief flew out. The sword wind became 10 feet long, and the silk handkerchief fell down and easily wrapped around a fisherman. Then, the silk handkerchief flew to other places and wrapped around a few more. As for the scholar himself, he controlled the flying sword and grabbed the air. 2 fishermen were pulled out of the river and were brought to the shore. This humble one thanks Mister for saving our lives. Several people landed on the shore. Their faces were already deathly pale, and they didn't think much about it as they lowered their heads and kowtowed. Get up. Crow's feet appeared at the corner of the scholar's eyes. He did not look young. He waved his hand and said, "It's late now, and the Liao River is not peaceful. It's better to go back and rest early. Although fishing for money is important, your life is more important. Sir, please save old second son." One of the fishermen said anxiously, "He still has a 70-year-old blind old woman at home." The scholar looked at the Liao River, which was still without any waves, and bit his tightly shut lips slightly. Plop, plop. Several fishermen hurriedly kowtowed again. They might not know who old second son was, but they knew that without old second son, that 70-year-old blind old woman would not be able to live for long. Wait a moment. The scholar hesitated for a moment and flew into the air again. At this time, 3 slightly older old men flew over from the distant sky. They were all dressed like Confucian cultivators. However, these old men did not carry swords on their backs. Instead, they stepped on a faint green cloud. The 3 old men were very respectful when they saw the scholar. The scholar gave a few instructions, and the 3 old men chased after the uncontrollable boats on the river. They seemed to want to send these boats to the shore. The scholar waved his hand, and a sword light rushed into the night sky. The direction was the Longevity Town. Sword light flashed around his body, and then he rushed into the Liao River. A few moments later, when the three old men sent the boats to the shore, Mr. Tai and Zhu Junfeng arrived together on a cloud. When they saw the situation, the two of them were shocked. When they heard the fishermen say that it was dangerous, their expressions changed drastically. They looked at each other, and then looked at each other. It was not that the Liao River was not dangerous. It was not that no fishermen had died on the Liao River. It was that, as the fishermen said, Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Tai, and had never heard of it before. My name is Zhu Yin, and my courtesy name is Zhu Junfeng. I am the dean of the Longevity Town Academy. Greetings, martial uncles. Zhu Junfeng saw that the three old men were Confucian cultivators, and hurriedly went forward to greet them. Mr. Tai, and did not dare to be negligent and bowed as well. Dean Zhu, junior brother Tai, we pay our respects to you. The three of them hurriedly returned the greeting and introduced themselves. They were all Confucian cultivators of the Chongyun sect. Their names were Qiujian, Liamo Ming, and Jidong. However, they did not tell Zhu Junfeng their courtesy names. After the five of them greeted each other, Zhu Junfeng did not ask too many questions because there were still fishermen from the Longevity Town. He looked at the three of them and said, Mr. Tai, and will accompany the three martial uncles here. I will go and take a look. Dean Zhu, Qiujian hurriedly called out, the river is dangerous. Mr. Imo Ming won't even let us go near it. You should, it's fine. Zhu Junfeng smiled. I have been in the Longevity Town for a long time. If I haven't been to the Liao River 100 times, I have at least been here dozens of times. I have done many things like rowing at night and drinking. Dean Zhu, Liamo Ming said unhappily, I know that you are in charge of this place. However, since Mr. Imo Ming is here, we naturally have to listen to his orders. Mr. Imo Ming said not to go there. That place is definitely dangerous. Furthermore, I have come here today precisely for this matter. If you think that a little scholar like you can handle it, then I will wait for Mr. Imo Ming to return and immediately turn back. Yes, I know my mistake. Zhu Junfeng's heart trembled as he hurriedly bowed. It's good that you know. Liamo Ming nodded and did not say anything else. He raised his head and looked at the Liao River. The wide Liao River was the same as before. There was no danger at all. There were very few giant boats in the middle of the river, but one would occasionally sail by. The lights on the giant boat flickered with the stars in the sky, and the fragments of moonlight on the river's surface seemed to resonate with each other. It made one wonder if this was the falling stars in the sky. Whoosh, a long river flowed against the current and rushed up to the sky. The brilliance of the river instantly covered all the stars and moonlight. -11. Chapter 3181. Mr. Imo is back? Jidong frowned and exclaimed, But Mr. Imo? Yes, Mr. Imo stepped on the river and flew across the sky, landing right in front of them. Unfortunately, his hands were empty, not even the corpses of the fishermen. My apologies. Imo gently landed, ignoring Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Tai. Instead, he walked up to the fishermen and bowed. I have failed you. Not only did I not find Sun Lauer and the others, I did not even see their corpses. Mr. Imo, you didn't go with the river? The fisherman asked in disbelief. Of course I did. Imo Jinli was not embarrassed by the fisherman's pointing fingers. He explained calmly, I have checked the area within a few miles, including the bottom of the river. Hiss. The fishermen were shocked, their bodies trembling. Could it be? I don't know what it is, and I didn't see it, so I don't dare to say anything. But for now, don't come out to fish at night. Imo Jinli said in a gentle voice, Of course, we will try to find the reason around the Longevity Town, but there might be some accidents. You should wait until the truth is out. But we all fish for a living. Even if we don't come out at night, we have to come to Liao River during the day. One of the fishermen said boldly. Sigh. Imo Jinli sighed, looked at Zhu Junfeng, and said to the fisherman, The Longevity Academy of the Chongyun sect will do its best to protect you. However, you all still need to be careful. Imo Jinli then took out a silver coin from his pocket and handed it to the fisherman. He said, "This is for Sun Lao's mother. Please give it to that poor old woman for me." "Thank you, Mr. Mo." The fisherman took it gratefully. "I thank you on behalf of Sun Lao. I will definitely bring this to Sun Lao. Please don't worry. You can go now." Mo Jianli waved his hand. "The fishing boat has been found. Go home quickly." "Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mo." The fishermen were overjoyed, but still scared. They packed up their fishing gear and their harvest and hurried back. "Greetings, Mr. Li." Zhu Junfeng could still call the few scholars martial uncle, but Mo Jianli, who was a scholar, could only call him grandmaster. However, among Confucian cultivators, teacher was an honorific, regardless of seniority. Most Confucian cultivators liked to hear this honorific, so Zhu Junfeng naturally addressed him as teacher. "Yes, Principal Zhu." There was no trace of a smile on Mo Jianli's face. He seemed to be feeling guilty about what had happened just now. He cupped his hands and bowed. "This old man will be troubling the principal for a period of time from now on. I don't dare." "Sir, please call me Junfeng." Zhu Junfeng hurriedly said respectfully, "Sir, you are my senior. Regardless of knowledge or cultivation, you are my teacher. The dean is just a common name. Sir, please don't humiliate me." "All right." Mo Jianli nodded, then bowed to Mr. Tai and said, "Mr. Taian, I haven't seen you for many years. Today, I see that you are still as strong as before." Mr. Mo, Mr. Tai, and was not convinced before he came here. However, when he saw Mo Jianli was neither arrogant nor humble. Mo Jianli was so amiable even in front of a few lowly fishermen, he was convinced. He hurriedly bowed and said, "In the early years, I just explained a few things to you. I don't dare to call myself your teacher." "Sir, you are wrong. A teacher for a day is a father for life." Mo Jianli's tone was still a bit indifferent. "Although you have never been my teacher, a few words of advice are enough. It is the tradition of Confucian cultivators to respect their teachers. If I don't acknowledge you as my teacher just because my cultivation is higher than yours, how can I carry forward the inheritance of Confucian cultivators?" "Haha, Mr. Mo." Mr. Taian laughed. "You can call me Mr. Mo. You don't have to call yourself my student. Otherwise, as a scholar, if I were to hear a scholar call me teacher, I would also feel uncomfortable in my heart." "All right, I got it." Mo Jianli didn't hesitate. He nodded and said to Zhu Junfeng, "Junfeng, did you hear what the fisherman said just now? Do you know what's going on?" "I've heard about it." Zhu Junfeng hurriedly replied. "I've never seen such a situation in all my years in Longevity Town. However, legend has it that thousands of years ago, Liao River was inhabited by the water tribe. These water tribe are cruel and often eat mortals alive. Every year, the Longevity Town would have to hand over virgin boys and girls on time. Otherwise, they would flood the town." "That's right." Mr. Taian nodded. "I've heard about it too. Because of the water tribe, the Longevity Town was plunged into misery and suffering. The people had no way of making a living. Almost every family was wailing in grief. 7 out of 10 people left for other places. Later on, an immortal passed by the Liao River and saw a group of fishermen carrying a crying boy and girl to throw into the Liao River as a sacrifice to the water tribe. Only then did he make a move to subdue the demon. He fought with the water tribe for 3 days and 3 nights, fighting until the sky turned dark and the earth turned dark. In the end, the water tribe was killed. Blood flowed all over the river. The immortal floated away. Later on, in order to commemorate this immortal, the Longevity Town built a Taoist temple for him on Jiangqiao Ridge. It's called Jiangqiao Temple." Zhu Junfeng continued. "They even called the statue the god of the river." "Junfeng, thousands of years ago, was there a Longevity Academy in Longevity Town?" Mo Jianli asked abruptly. "Of course there wasn't." Zhu Junfeng said curiously. "My Chongyan sect only built the Longevity Academy 1,200 years ago. At that time, I'm afraid my Chongyan sect was still a small sect, right?" Mo Jianli nodded. "However, even if there wasn't a Longevity Academy in the Chongyan sect, there was still a Jingzhu Academy in the Bamboo sect. So why didn't the Longevity Town spread the story of the Jingzhu Academy but instead built a Taoist temple in Jiangchao Ridge? This? I don't know. Zhu Junfeng was a little embarrassed. The Academy's records about this are not very detailed. I don't mean to blame you, Mo Jinli explained. I received a secret order from the sect and found this information in the sect's records about the Longevity Town. I didn't know about this before. Mister, please enlighten me. Zhu Junfeng clasped his hands and said, There's no other reason. It's because the students of the Jingzhou Academy from the Bamboo Sect all died in the battle with the Water Tribe. None of them survived, and that so-called immortal was just passing by when the Water Tribe died and took advantage of the situation. It's not like the stories said, where they saw some virgin boys and girls. Mo Jinli sneered. That so-called immortal was not a Taoist cultivator, but a Buddhist disciple. But that disciple was not a monk who shaved his head, so he was mistaken for a Taoist cultivator. A Buddhist disciple who didn't shave his head? Zhu Junfeng was surprised. There's such a person? Which one is it? The sect's records didn't mention it in detail, so I don't know. Don't ask too much. I guess the sect didn't want to leave behind a thick mark of the Buddhism sect in the Longevity Town, Mo Jinli said lightly. And in the following thousands of years, the number of Buddhist cultivators gradually decreased. On the contrary, there were more and more monks who shaved their heads in the Zhongxian continent. Oh, Zhu Junfeng was deep in thought. Mr. Tai and frowned and said, Mr. Mo, so what happened today this? I don't know either. Maybe it's a little strange. Mo Jinli sighed. He turned to look at the moon, which had already set, and the Liao River, which was covered in mist again, and said, Our Chongyun Martial School has received some news. It seems that some water-kind creatures have come to the Liao River. As for whether they are the descendants of those water-kind creatures thousands of years ago, and whether they want to harm the Longevity Town, the Martial School has no right to know. But for the safety of the Longevity Academy, I have been ordered to come here. Hiss. Hearing this, Zhu Junfeng gasped and said hurriedly, The Water Tribe are naturally demons. They have a long lifespan, which is far from the human race. This Liao River is far away from the East Sea, and there hasn't been any Water Tribe members wreaking havoc for hundreds of years. If there really are Water Tribe members coming, they must be the descendants of the Water Tribe. It's too early to make a judgment now. Mo Jinli waved his hand. It's better to wait and see. Oh right, Mr. Tai, and looked at Zhu Junfeng and said in a low voice, The Shaojian Temple seems to have sent experts here too. Could it be because of this? Maybe. Mo Jinli's eyes flashed with a trace of disgust. The Buddhism sect is everywhere in the Zhongxian continent. Their dharma is the best at bewitching people. What happened in the Longevity Town thousands of years ago may be hidden from ordinary people, but it may not be hidden from the Buddhism sect's experts. And now they have many spies in the Zhongxian continent. The sources of information are no less than us Confucian cultivators. If the Chongyun sect can get the information, they can get it even more. Besides, the Shaojin Temple has grown from a small temple of 2 or 3 monks to a temple of 30 or 40 people. Its future is limitless. It can't be ignored by the Yunlin Temple. I just don't know which monk from the Yunlin Temple came here today. And Zhu Junfeng suddenly remembered something and said hurriedly, This afternoon, a demon appeared on the streets of the Longevity Town. Oh? What demon? What's its cultivation level? Mo Jinli's eyes lit up as he asked. Zhu Junfeng hurriedly told him what he heard, and then said, A few students from the academy who returned early have seen it. Mister, why don't you come back with me and ask for more details? That's right. Mo Jinli clapped his hands and said, Since there are traces of that demon, I'm more confident now. Jidong, you stay here. If you encounter anything strange, just go back to the academy and report it to me. Yes, Mr. Mo. Jidong answered and walked out from the crowd. -11. Chapter 3182. The others followed Zhu Junfeng back to Longevity Academy. Jidong flew to a hillside and stood with his hands behind his back, quietly looking at the rapidly flowing Liao River. Liao River's water was like thousands of years ago. Although the waves were small, they were not completely dead. Under the small waves, there was an incomparably surging undercurrent. This undercurrent was not something that could be seen clearly by the greenwood eyes and divine sense. Longevity Town's turbulence did not affect Xiaohua at the tidal river temple. Xiaohua sat on the praying mat and calmly refined the earth crystal Yao milk. In front of this mountain of crystal milk, Xiaohua's refinement was tantamount to a foolish old man moving a mountain. Although Xiaohua still had some Emo Zhao's corpse in his space, which also had a corrosive effect on this crystal milk, the stingy Xiaohua was not willing to part with it. This was all heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Wasting even a little bit was disrespectful to heaven and earth. He could only move it bit by bit like an ant moving house, turning it into a part of his cultivation. Now that I've arrived at hidden immortal continent, perhaps I can find my origin. Xiaohua secretly thought as he cultivated. Since I have the 18th level of Qi refining technique, it is obviously different from Dawn Rain continent. The Taoist technique of hidden immortal continent is also different from Dawn Rain continent. The classification of the lower levels is also very different, very similar to my cultivation. Maybe I didn't come from the 10,000 demon realm, but from one of the 3 continents. The heavens sent this Xiao back to fulfill this Zhao's dream of returning home. Of course, if I can't find my home here, then I will do my best to improve my cultivation and return to Dawn Rain continent. Presumably, those 2 old farts from Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension Sect will know something. Xiaohua thought of this, and his eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. Other than Xiaohua, there was also Xiao Jian who was restless. Tonight, Xiao Jian was like sitting on a wave. He was suddenly thrown into the air and then fell down again. Even now, he was not at peace. It was because he really could not guess Xiaohua's cultivation. On one hand, he doubted Xiaohua's origin. On the other hand, he believed in Xiaohua's innocence. On one hand, he overestimated Xiaohua's cultivation. On the other hand, he doubted his own overestimation. After all, Xiao Jian did not detect Xiaohua's divine sense, nor did he detect Xiaohua's true qi. He did not believe that Xiaohua's blocked meridians could cultivate true qi. But it was clear that since Xiaohua was able to produce miraculous pills and possess divine sense, his background was in no way simple. But what made Xiao Jian about to go crazy was that this Taoist cultivator with an extraordinary background actually didn't even know about the essence energy of the 3 continents. Even with his wisdom, he couldn't figure out if Xiaohua was testing him or if he really didn't understand. Rather than calling Xiaohua fellow Taoist, Xiao Jian might as well call him Senior Xiaohua. However, rather than calling Xiaohua by his real name, he still wanted to call him fellow Taoist Xiaohua. In the face of the challenge from the small golden temple, just Yuanya alone was no longer of any use. The only person he could rely on now was Xiaohua. Xiaohua was the only person Xiao Jian and Yuanya could rely on to not be expelled from the Longevity Town. Compared to Xiao Jian's distracting thoughts, Yuanya was much simpler. This guy hugged the branch of the banyan tree and slept soundly. His saliva, along with the smile on his face, almost got stuck on a banyan fruit. If the townspeople who flocked to the Rivertide Temple to pick the immortal fruits found out that the thing they regarded as miraculous pills was actually stained with Yuanya's saliva, would they beat Yuanya to the ground and trample on him 10,000 times? Would they not care about the happiness Yuanya brought last night because of his dream of becoming Xiaohua's disciple? The night passed quickly. It was not delayed by the deaths of several fishermen in Liaojiang. When the first rays of dawn appeared, the sunlight passed through the banyan tree and fell into the temple. Xiao Jian's heart was even more anxious. If not for the fact that he couldn't use his divine sense often, he would have already released it. He really wanted to know if the Rivertide Temple's liveliness last night was able to attract the townspeople's attention. Would it be able to make them slightly shift their gaze and piety from the small golden temple to the Rivertide Temple? At the very least, there was no need for him, the representative of the Rivertide Temple, the successor of the Taoist school, to show his face in public and set up a stall to sell divination, right? Listening to the chirping of the birds on the banyan tree, Xiao Jian's eyes from time to time drifted towards the small door of the temple, ready to be drowned by the tide of people at any time. Unfortunately, after looking for the time it took to eat a meal, the small door did not even make a creaking sound. First, there was still the pleasant chirping of the birds. which made Xiao Jian feel that it was too noisy. That's not right. Suddenly, Xiao Jian woke up. Since when did his Rivertide temple have birds? Those birds were a delicacy in the eyes of Yuanya, who grew up in the forest, especially when Yuanya did not have enough copper coins to buy meat buns. Therefore, after Xiao Jian and Yuanya arrived at the Rivertide temple, there were no more birds chirping in the morning. How come there are birds today? Yeah. Has he already stuffed his teeth with meat buns? Xiao Jian immediately had a bad feeling. When he hurriedly rushed to the west wing, Xiao Hua, who was meditating there, was already nowhere to be found. Damn it! The two of them couldn't have eloped, right? Xiao Jian immediately became anxious. Although he was paranoid for an entire night and did not eliminate his doubts about Xiao Hua, but thinking about it, if Xiao Hua was not by his side, he would have no one to rely on. It would be just like when he was alone and did not have Yuanya. Xiao Jian rushed out of the temple even more hurriedly than before. When he saw Xiao Hua, who was on the empty ground next to the Rivertide temple, using the Big Dipper magical fist, and Yuanya, who was obediently lying behind a small tree in the distance like a leopard peeping, his heart immediately calmed down. Hee, this sunlight is really beautiful. Xiao Jian looked at the distant morning sun and took a deep breath. He raised his hands and stretched his waist, pretending to dance a few times with his fists and legs. He opened his mouth and scolded, "What a good-for-nothing! How can a small tree support your fat body? Since you want to secretly learn, then do it openly and brazenly. Why do you have to be so secretive?" Xiao Jian's words immediately startled the chirping birds on the banyan tree. Naturally, Yuanya also flew up with the birds. This guy's face carried a trace of shame. His hands and feet nimbly climbed up the small tree. His whole body borrowed the elasticity of the branches to rush up the banyan tree and then hid his whole body between the branches. Xiao Hua naturally had already seen through the appearance of this pair of master and disciple. He secretly laughed in his heart and did not pay attention to them. The current him is already 200 years old. He can really call himself an old man? Xiao Jian and Yuanya are just two little children in front of him. However, Xiao Hua's face is so tender that he also likes others to call him young man. The Big Dipper magical fist was used one move after another. The slow and steady flow melted the earth crystal Yao milk bit by bit. Xiao Hua closed his eyes and enjoyed this relaxed and tranquil atmosphere. He did not seem to care about Yuanya secretly learning. If the Big Dipper magical fist could be learned so easily, would it still be a bone-tempering secret technique? Even though Yuanya, who had escaped, still revealed half of his eyes on the banyan tree. His eyes were burning with passion, but Xiao Hua did not expose him. Xiao Jian also did not think that Yuanya, who was always ignorant of the ways of the world, would be so shy today. He actually escaped back to the Taoist temple. He strolled in front of the Taoist temple for a while. From time to time, he would look down at the Jiangshao Ridge and see that there were already some people on the main road. Unfortunately, these people were only limited to the main road. Not even half of them flowed towards the Jiangshao temple. Xiao Jian sighed. He knew that his dream was shattered. He loudly berated, "You quickly get down for this old man. Follow this old man to the town." Similarly, the yes master that Xiao Jian was accustomed to did not appear. Instead, it was Yuanya who asked in puzzlement, "Master, didn't we have so many copper coins yesterday? Why do we need to go to the town again?" "Oh, that's right. Master wants to eat steamed buns, right? I will look for a while and then go buy some for Master." Idiot! Xiao Jian had already entered the Taoist temple. He angrily scolded, "What do you know? Do you know how to sit and eat? Although there are a lot of copper coins, it is not enough for us to eat for a year and a half. This old man should take advantage of these days when the Taoist temple's feng shui is flourishing, to earn a few more copper coins." While speaking, Xiao Jian hurriedly entered the east room. There was a series of crackling sounds in the room. No matter how I look at it, I can understand it. However, after I hit the front, I forgot the back. -11. This was something that he had never encountered in the years he had been at Jiangshao Temple. What are they going to sacrifice? Could it be that they are going to make a water and Landau temple? Xiao Jian said to himself. Then, should they go to Xiaojin Temple? Master. On the branch of the banyan tree outside the temple, Yuan Ye's figure strangely appeared. He shouted, I'm afraid that your reputation has already spread out last night. These people are here to worship you. Io, not bad, not bad. Xiao Jian suddenly understood. He hurriedly lowered his head to look at his own Dao robe and immediately felt extremely dissatisfied. He turned his head and crashed into the temple. It was unknown whether he went to lock the door or to change his Dao robe. In short, when the sound of gongs and drums arrived in front of the temple, Xiaohua quietly watched from the side. Xiao Jian was wearing a new Dao robe and brought Yuanya out of the temple. At this time, Yuanya was also wearing new clothes. However, looking at Yuanya's twisted head and back appearance, he was definitely not used to it. However, this did not affect Xiao Jian's face full of smiles and extremely amiable. Xiao Jian walked in front of the three big men holding the tray and bowed. I, Xiao Jian, am the temple master of Jiangqiao Temple. May I know the reason for your visit? Who knew that the respect and answer that Xiao Jian expected did not appear? The three men did not pay any attention to Xiao Jian at all. In the order of sheep, pig, and cow, they walked past where Xiao Jian bowed and entered the Taoist temple. Even the boy and girl behind them with the incense burner in their hands did not pay any attention to Xiao Jian. Cough, cough. Xiao Jian was extremely embarrassed. He coughed twice and was about to speak when Yuanya suddenly said in a low voice, Io, Master, I forgot. Previously, when I was in Longevity Town, I seem to have heard someone say that this Jiangqiao temple used to worship the sea god. Did they come to worship the sea god? Are they not looking for Master? Damn it. Xiao Jian lifted his leg and turned around to kick Yuan Ye's knee. Why didn't you say so earlier? Disciple just remembered. Yuan Ye felt very wronged, but he still nimbly dodged Xiao Jian's kick and explained in a low voice, Go in first. No matter who they are worshipping, you are the temple master now. Xiao Hua said in a bad mood. Yes, what fellow Xiao said is right. Xiao Jian felt that it was reasonable and felt less embarrassed. He did not have time to argue with Yuan Ye and took the opportunity to enter the temple while the lion dance was showing off in front of the temple. Sure enough, after Xiao Jian and the others entered, the dozens of people behind the lion dance also rushed in. In an instant, the small temple was completely surrounded. Xiao Jian had just walked to the center of the temple when he saw the three big men enter the main hall. One of the three big men waved his hand, and the candles on the altar were swept to the ground by him. Seeing this, Xiao Jian could not help but feel anxious. How were they here to worship? They were clearly here to cause trouble. The Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect were not on good terms. The monks of the small gold temple also did not come to the Jiangqiao temple to cause trouble. Xiao Jian shouted loudly. However, without waiting for him to shout, the three big men simultaneously turned around and angrily said, Where did this wild Taoist come from? This Jiangqiao temple is the place where my Longevity Town worships the sea god. Not only did you secretly occupy the temple, but you are also here to act mysterious? If you dare to say another word, see if I don't chase you out of the Jiangqiao mountain range. When Xiao Jian heard this, he immediately shut his mouth and did not dare to say another word. He was afraid that he would be chased out of Longevity Town by these fishermen before he could fight with the monks of the small gold temple. Lord Sea God! Mournful shouts came from behind Xiao Jian. Dozens of old and weak women and children wearing mourning clothes entered the Jiangqiao temple and cried as they rushed towards the main hall. Xiao Jian tactfully dodged to the side. He was even more agile than Yuan Ye. Following the cries and shouts of these fishermen, the three burly men placed the three offerings on the altar. The two virgin boys and virgin girls also presented the incense burner respectfully, then stepped back to the altar with their heads bowed and eyes lowered. In the main hall, the three offerings shone brightly. The two young boys and girls were beautiful and charming. Smoke curled around the incense burner. Although the statue was still tattered, with the cries and sincere worship of the fishermen in the main hall, it was unknown how many times more powerful it was compared to the worship of Xiao Jian and Yuan Ye. Xiao Hua stood not far behind Yuan Ye. His eyes flickered as he saw everything clearly. After less than an hour, the fishermen wearing mourning clothes paid their respects. The other fishermen also paid their respects. Xiao Hua already understood. He knew that a disaster had occurred in the Liao River last night. 10 fishermen lost their lives in the river. These fishermen came to pay their respects to this statue for their own safety and future livelihood. They did not know how many years they had not paid their respects to this statue. At the end of the worship, a few craftsmen first went forward to pay their respects. Then, they took out a strange ruler and thread to carefully measure the statue. Then, they took out a brush and ink to carefully mark some numbers on an image. Xiao Hua also clearly saw that the image was of a statue. This statue was of a male body. The 2 strands of mustache above his lips were especially obvious. Other than the mustache, the statue was full and round like a heavenly palace. His ears were even drooping over his shoulders. In his eyes, other than some compassion, there was even more ferocity. Oh, is this the so-called sea god? It seems like it is only a Thoso. Compared to Taoist Master Xiao, it is still far inferior. Xiao Hua faintly smiled and looked elsewhere. Unlike Xiao Hua's indifference, Xiao Jian was laughing nonstop. He promised the villagers of General Ridge that he would reconstruct the statue's golden body. However, in reality, he did not even know what the statue originally looked like. Moreover, he still had to find the craftsman and discuss with them how to repair it. In particular, although he had a lot of copper coins last night, it was far from enough to repair the statue. Now that the fishermen were paying their respects to the sea god, wouldn't it save him a lot of trouble by reconstructing the statue's golden body? How could Xiao Jian not be happy? When the villagers of General Ridge ask me, this old man will say that I repaired it myself. Xiao Jian had already made up his mind. Moreover, he believed that the villagers of General Ridge would definitely not ask too much. The craftsman wrote down some numbers and hurriedly left the Taoist temple. It was obvious that they wanted to reconstruct the statue's golden body in the shortest time possible. The fishermen in the Taoist temple excitedly paid their respects a few more times. Seeing that the ritual that had nothing to do with Taoist Master Xiao Jian was about to end, more than 10 people came in from outside the Taoist temple. These people looked different from the fishermen. However, when they looked at the fishermen in the Taoist temple, there was no surprise in their eyes. Naturally, the fishermen did not pay any attention to them. They even nodded to each other in a friendly manner. However, when these people kowtowed, their first sentence successfully caused the emotions of the 2 groups of people to explode. -11. Chapter 3184. Thank you, Taoist Xiao. One of the vigorous old men knelt down in the main hall and said in a low voice, last night, I received Taoist Zhao's miraculous elixir and took it overnight. The chronic illness that I've had for decades disappeared at once. Before the old man finished speaking, the fishermen who were packing up and preparing to leave the Taoist temple could not take it anymore. A strong man hurriedly shouted, Old man, what are you talking about? This Jiangshao temple worships the sea god of our fishermen. There's no Taoist Xiao. If you want to worship, you can go to Taoist Zhao's Taoist temple. Don't worship blindly here. If you annoy the sea god, not only will we fishermen have nowhere to make a living, but the entire longevity town will also be eaten up by the monsters in the water. Little guy, what do you know? The old man glared at the fisherman with disdain and said, This Jiangshao temple worships Taoist Xiao. He just showed up yesterday. Not only did he save my family of 3 in General Ridge, but he also gave me elixirs. Look, my chronic illness and these people's illnesses are all thanks to Taoist Master Zhao's blessing. Bullshit. Before the old man finished speaking, another old man who looked older than him rushed out from the fisherman. He held a small oar in his hand and scolded, Rebellious thing. This is the place where my fishermen worship the sea god. It has been here for thousands of years. When did it become the place where you worship Taoist Xiao? Seeing that you are all villagers of my longevity town, get out of here quickly. If you dare to say filthy words again and slander the sea god, I'll beat you to death with a stick. How dare you? The few villagers next to him could not take it anymore. This is obviously Taoist Zhao's Taoist temple. Last night, we just worshipped Taoist Xiao. Furthermore, Taoist Xiao has already shown up. Beat them to death. The old fisherman was so angry that he was trembling. The oar in his hand was also trembling. When these fishermen heard that nearly 10 fishermen had died in the river last night, they already felt that something was wrong. They discussed overnight that they would rush to the sea god of the Jiangqiao temple to repair his golden body. Moreover, this worship ceremony was decided after a night of discussion. Who would have thought that after they had been busy for the whole morning and were just about to end, the villagers of General Ridge would appear and call the sea god Xiao Daoist Xiao. This was obviously blasphemy to the sea god. The painstaking efforts of nearly 100 fishermen were all in vain. How could this old man not be angry? He seemed to see the Liao River filled with fishermen's corpses. Since the old man had such thoughts, the other fishermen naturally had the same thoughts. Over 10 fishermen who were closer to the main hall waved their oars and pounced forward. In an instant, they had knocked over the villagers from General Ridge to the ground. Quickly go and save them. Xiaohua saw that the situation was bad and knew that the situation today was worse than yesterday. He hurriedly ordered Yuanya. Yuanya was stunned for a moment, then he let out a loud roar. His figure pounced out like a leopard, rushing to the side of the main hall. He raised his hands and stomped his feet. In just a short moment, he had knocked the dozen or so fishermen to the ground. Where did this bastard come from? The old fisherman's mouth was so foul that it hit Yuanya's soft spot. Roar! Yuanya kicked a fisherman into the hall, raised his head and roared. Then, he suddenly turned around and stared at the old fisherman with his bloodshot eyes. Plop! Without waiting for Yuanya to make a move, his gaze that was as sharp as a sword was enough to scare the old man to the point that he wet his pants and sat on the ground. Great-grandfather! A few strong men in the distance shouted and prepared to pounce over. Yuanya's strength had already gathered and was about to erupt. It seemed that he would be able to rush to the front of the old fisherman without the need for those strong men to pounce over. He only needed to lightly slap, and he would definitely be able to kill this old fisherman who flaunted his seniority and spoke vicious words. As long as it was a farmer in the countryside, no matter if it was a fisherman fishing on the Liao River or a farmer digging for food in the fields, all they cared about was the life of their family members. All they thought about was their ordinary life. When they were powerless to control their lives, they would always place their hopes on God, on an existence that was beyond their ability. Moreover, in their simple minds, they might not risk their lives for the sake of living because there was always a glimmer of hope in life, making them reluctant to risk their lives. However, for the sake of the God in their hearts, for the sake of their last hope, they would definitely risk their lives regardless of everything. Perhaps the farmers were simple, but if they were stubborn, then even if they were to bang their head against the wall, they would not easily turn back. Therefore, even if Yuanya suddenly showed his power and knocked several fishermen to the ground in an instant, and even looked at the old fisherman like a wild beast, if something went wrong, he would immediately kill him. However, those fishermen who had been fighting against the fierce wind and fierce waves for many years instead became ferocious. That old man clenched his teeth, as if he did not care about Yuanya's snake-like gaze staring at him. He waved his hand and said, "Hit." Xiaohua was slightly angry in his heart. He could clearly see the farmer's pity, but the farmer's selfishness was also something he did not expect. Even if it was just a clay sculpture, it did not really bring them any hope, yet they were already fighting over it like this. If there were really any benefits, then it would be just like yesterday's chaos. Humph. Xiaohua snorted coldly and was just about to speak. However, he heard a loud and clear voice speak before Xiaohua could say anything. "How dare you? This is the dojo of my Taoist god. I would like to see which one of you doesn't want to live anymore and dares to anger the god. It doesn't matter if you don't want to live, but don't let the god's anger land on Longevity Town, General Ridge, and Liaojiang." Xiaohua was startled and looked at the main hall with some disbelief. Xiao Jian, who was cowardly and fearfully shrinking back just now, actually stepped over a screaming fisherman and stood in front of Yuanya as he said coldly. The fishermen were somewhat unruly. Just when they heard the old man's command, the dozen or so well-built fishermen all wanted to pounce towards the main hall. However, Xiao Jian's cold words were like a sudden clap of thunder that struck their heads, instantly scaring them. "You are all originally pious people. Today, you came to worship Lord Sea God. Lord Sea God is also very happy. Seeing that the group of fishermen were temporarily frightened, Xiao Jian hurriedly said, "But now, you dare to behave atrociously in front of Lord Sea God. Do you still have Lord Sea God in your eyes? Since you dare to make a move in front of Lord Sea God, how can you say that you believe in Lord Sea God? Since you don't believe in Lord Sea God, how can he accept your offerings? Although these three animals are extremely revered, how could they have the slightest bit of weight in the face of your disrespect? Even if you offer 10 offerings and reconstruct your golden bodies 10 times, you still won't be able to obtain Lord Sea God's gift." Hearing Xiao Jian's short words, not only did the expressions of all the fishermen change, even the old fisherman who spoke viciously was greatly shocked. "That's right, today, I came to worship Lord Sea God. If I were to make a move here, how can I be considered to be worshipping? Since I'm not worshipping, then wouldn't everything today be in vain? Lord Sea God, please forgive our mistakes. We are all people who deserve to die. I hope that your mercy will exempt us from the disrespect in our hearts." There were already a few women and children who were trembling with fear. They threw themselves onto the ground in front of the main hall and started crying. How could the fishermen who were about to make a move still move? They hurriedly shrank back and stole a glance at the old fisherman. The old fisherman clenched his teeth. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Jian beat him to it. "You aren't my Taoist disciples, so you don't understand my Taoist rules at all. Let's not talk about the thousands of titles of the gods we worship. Even I, other than my original name, have different titles like Taoist Xiao and Wanderer Tranquil. If I were to succeed in my cultivation one day, perhaps even a holy name would descend. Therefore, Lord Sea God is Taoist Xiao, and Taoist Xiao is also Lord Sea God. By the way, this old benefactor, I want to ask you, what did Lord Sea God call himself that day? Has he ever appeared in front of you?" The old fisherman originally wanted to say something, but his words were immediately choked by Taoist Xiao. He opened his mouth, but was unable to say anything. "If I'm not wrong, Lord Sea God should have appeared before. Even all of you have seen his heroic bearing." Taoist Xiao continued. "However, we don't have the immortal lifespan of gods, so how can we remember so clearly? Even if our ancestors knew that Lord Sea God was Taoist Xiao, when it was passed down to our generation, his name had long been forgotten. I can't help but say that Taoist Xiao appeared at the River Tide Temple 2 days ago and scolded us for forgetting him and cutting off his family line." Plop. The old fisherman didn't dare to say another word. His knees went soft and he knelt on the ground again. "Damn it." Xiao Hua at the side couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Taoist Zhao's serious face, he thought to himself, "This Xiao Jian is definitely not an ordinary person." With a few simple words, he was able to convince these irascible fishermen and force them to kneel down. Truly amazing. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again. Could it be that what this guy said before, and those stories, are all true? Xiao Hua's impression of Xiao Jian wasn't particularly good. He felt that Xiao Jian's mouth was full of nonsense and slippery. Therefore, he only believed half of what Xiao Jian said. Now, looking at Xiao Jian's appearance, he was somewhat pensive. Just when Xiao Hua was admiring, he suddenly saw a strange expression appear on Taoist Zhao's incomparably pious face. Taoist Zhao's two eyes were blinking at him, as if he wanted to say something to him. "Oh!" Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and immediately opened his mouth. "Humph!" An extremely cold voice floated above the main hall of the River Tide Temple. "Ouch!" At the same time, in the River Tide Temple, other than Taoist Xiao and Yuanya, everyone held their heads with one hand and a painful expression appeared on their faces as they wailed with all their might. -11. Chapter 3185. A bunch of stubborn things. At the same time, the voice scolded coldly, "Back then, I saved you from fire and water. How many years has it been? And you actually don't even know my name." "Lord Sea God! Lord Sea God!" Everyone was trembling with fear, shouting loudly and banging their heads on the ground. Moreover, all of you actually dared to cause trouble in my training ground. You've truly disturbed me. You wait. Forget it. Following the last sentence, the faintly discernible voice suddenly stopped. At the same time, everyone's head no longer hurt. Lord Sea God, Lord Sea God. All the fishermen wailed loudly, please don't give up on us. Taoist Xiao, Taoist Xiao. More than 10 villagers from General Ridge also shouted loudly, looking abnormally remorseful. Sigh. Humans, their nature is just so despicable. Taoist Zhao's words leisurely rose. Living comfortably, they forget their own beliefs. Only after receiving a lesson and suffering do they realize their unbearable stubbornness. After saying that, Taoist Xiao turned his head and knelt in front of the statue. Kong Kong Kong, he kowtowed a few times. His forehead was clearly bruised, but Taoist Xiao was still unwilling to give up. He directly kowtowed 9 times. A stream of blood flowed out from his forehead. Only then did he cry out sorrowfully, Taoist, don't blame them for not believing, don't care about their stubbornness, this is all my fault. It's all my fault for not waiting for Taoist to teach them properly. If Taoist master wants to blame me, any punishment will fall on this lowly one. I am a Taoist disciple. I should receive this boundless punishment. I am willing to represent everyone in Longevity Town. Speaking until here, Taoist Zhao's voice immediately stopped. He hugged his head with both hands and rolled on the ground. In just a moment, his Taoist robe was already in a mess. His teeth were also clenched so hard that it made creaking sounds. Blood even seeped out. Xiao Hua was stunned. He looked at Taoist Xiao with some disbelief and said inwardly, this guy, isn't his acting too realistic? I didn't use the soul-piercing technique on him at all. Taoist Xiao, Taoist Xiao. Seeing Taoist Xiao in such pain, a few villagers hurriedly shouted, Humph. When he saw this, Xiao Hua knew that it was time for him to enter the arena. Thus, his cold voice resounded once more. Out of consideration for the fact that I'm a disciple of the Taoist sect, Xiao Hua had also learned to be obedient now. He didn't even finish his sentence and let others guess the second half of his sentence. Sure enough, as soon as Xiao Hua's voice faded, everyone cried tears of joy and shouted, Lord Sea God, we know our wrongs, we know our wrongs. Naturally, Xiao Hua wouldn't make another sound. As for Taoist Xiao, he stood up in an awkward manner. His face, which was in so much pain that it was almost convulsing, still carried a trace of glory and even some unusual excitement. Oh no, this Xiao has fallen into his trap again. Xiao Hua looked at the excitement on Xiao Jian's face and suddenly had a feeling of being schemed against. That's right. Last night, no matter how Xiao Jian probed, Xiao Hua didn't say anything. This caused Xiao Jian to be puzzled the entire night, unable to determine Xiao Hua's cultivation. Or perhaps he couldn't be sure whether the so-called miracle was done by Xiao Hua or not, even if he was sure that Xiao Hua had some tricks up his sleeves. But, as long as he was a little clever with his mouth, wouldn't he be able to achieve the effect of scaring ordinary people? But now, he was able to make hundreds of people hold their heads and cry out in pain. This wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Even an ordinary cultivator probably wouldn't have this kind of magical ability. Xiao Hua, who claimed to have just entered the grade yesterday, was now probed by Xiao Jian all of a sudden. This guy really has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There was no need to say more about the following scene. The fishermen and the villagers of General Ridge wept bitterly and almost hugged each other. They all regretted their contempt and ignorance, just like brothers who had met after dozens of years. All the previous grudges vanished like smoke in thin air. Then, the crowd, under Taoist Zhao's gratified gaze, gave out a lot of copper coins. Only then did they respectfully bid farewell to Taoist Xiao and Lord Sea God with their longing for a beautiful future and their unwavering belief in Taoist Xiao or Lord Sea God. The entire Jiang Chao temple gradually calmed down. Although there were still some believers who were reluctant to leave immediately, they still wandered around inside the temple, wanting to touch the divine aura or encounter the so-called miracle. But these Taoist Xiao didn't care anymore. Without the previous carefulness and that charming smile, Taoist Xiao leisurely instructed Yuanya, watch over here properly. Don't let the secular people offend Taoist Zhao's dignity. Yes, master, Yuanya answered, but his eyes were looking at Xiao Hua. The scene just now had made him extremely shocked. He was able to knock down 10 strong men in one go, but he didn't have the means to give hundreds of people headaches at the same time. This was really beyond his knowledge. After inviting Xiao Hua into the East Room, Xiao Jian looked outside and saw that there weren't many people paying attention. He bowed and said, "Disciple Xiao Jian greets Senior." "No need." Xiao Hua waved his hand and stopped him from bowing. He said lightly, "You're not a true Taoist disciple, and I'm also not your so-called Taoist successor. You don't have to be so respectful. I'm just staying here for a few days. When the time is right, I'll leave." "Yes, Senior." Xiao Hua's cultivation hadn't recovered by 10%, but Xiao Jian was even worse. He tried but couldn't kneel. Xiao Jian took advantage of the situation and said with a bitter smile, "Disciple knows that I've offended Senior before, and even I've offended you a lot. But right now, River Tide Temple can be considered a Taoist sect. Although Senior has already agreed to take action 10 days later, I hope that Senior will take into account the fact that the villagers of Longevity Town worship Taoist Xiao and Lord Sea God, and help us. In this world, there might not be a God. It's just that when there are many people who believe in it, there will be a God. This God is nothing more than the hope of these villagers. Whether or not the God exists is not important. That so-called miracle is even less important." Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Yes, Senior's words are very pertinent. But right now, the ignorant villagers don't know that this God is in their hearts. They've only been blinded by the mortal world and only want some miracle to help them escape from the mortal world. It's just like how poor people yearn to become rich overnight." Xiao Jian agreed with Xiao Hua's words. "That's why, although this disciple tried his best to pass on my Taoist teachings to them, they simply didn't listen. They only looked at the methods of the Xiao Jian Temple's bald donkey." Hee. Xiao Hua knew that Xiao Jian and Monk Mingyu were the same kind of trash, so he was too lazy to point it out. He only smiled and didn't say anything. Xiao Jian was somewhat unable to understand what Xiao Hua was thinking. He looked at Xiao Hua somewhat awkwardly, as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. "If you have something to say, come in and say it." Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows. "Do you think this old man can't see you hiding there?" "Yes, master." Yuanya jumped out from the door of the East Room and once again knelt down in front of Xiao Hua with a plop, kowtowed and said, "Master, please accept this disciple's kowtow." "It's useless for you to kowtow again." Xiao Hua didn't stop him. His tone was still indifferent as he said, "This old man has already said that you are already old, and your meridians have completely matured. You simply can't cultivate my Taoist techniques anymore. Moreover, your temperament hasn't been guided since young, only knowing how to kill. Now that you haven't obtained a divine ability, you are already somewhat unable to control yourself. If you obtain this old man's divine ability, wouldn't you be even more rampant? This old man can naturally control you, but what if this old man isn't here? You will bring about a huge disaster." "Master." Hearing this, Yuan Ye's face became very anxious. However, he also didn't know how to explain himself. He obediently got up and opened his mouth, not knowing how to persuade Xiao Hua. Xiao Jian even gave him a look, telling him to continue kneeling and rather die than get up. Xiao Jian already saw some clues. Xiao Hua was someone who could be persuaded but not cowed by force. If he continued to pester him, he might be able to make Xiao Hua change his mind. Unfortunately, Yuanya wasn't Xiao Jian. Although he understood Xiao Jian's look in the end, he still didn't kneel down. "Senior." Xiao Jian's eyes turned, sighed several times, and similarly pleaded, "Ya is a good child. This is something this disciple knew when I first saw him. That's why I brought him by my side." Xiao Jian. Hearing this, Xiao Hua immediately interrupted him and said coldly, "Don't think that this Xiao is kind and deceived this Xiao. Don't think that this Xiao doesn't know that you left Yuanya behind, because you want him to protect you. It's not because of your so-called kindness, nor is it because of his nature. Don't think that this Xiao doesn't know that there are several eyesores under Jiangxiao Ridge." Hearing this, Xiao Jian's face immediately turned pale. He bit his lips and looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. He didn't understand. In just a day's time, Xiao Hua already knew so much. AI, it's all this disciple's fault. Xiao Jian lowered his head and said very sincerely, just now in the main hall, this disciple had some thoughts. This disciple actually had the delusion of testing senior's cultivation. I really deserve to die. And Xiaohua didn't comment. He was indeed a bit angry because of what happened just now. Moreover, this disciple also admits that when I saw ya, my first thought was that he was a rare commodity worth hoarding. Since he was going to be thrown into the wilderness or killed in the arena, why not see if I could make him submit to this disciple and become this disciple's protection? Xiao Jian continued, however, this disciple's heart isn't made of stone. All these years, this disciple saw something in ya that this disciple couldn't see in other people. Although he didn't live in the human world since he was young and didn't understand human nature and ethics. But it was also because of this that he maintained his pure heart and maintained his innate hobby. He likes to kill, and this is the most direct way to solve problems. But he wouldn't cause trouble for no reason and kill people for no reason. You also saw it for yourself. He would rather buy a few meat buns on credit than rob others. He would rather give his precious meat buns to senior than let senior starve. -11. Chapter 3186. How is that possible? Hearing Xiao Jian's explanation, Xiaohua sneered. How can a person who came out of the forest not rob other people's things? Otherwise, how could he come out of the forest? Yeah, tell the senior. Xiao Jian kindly looked at Yuanya. Yes, master. Yuanya nodded and looked at Xiaohua with some fear. Master, when disciple just came out of the forest, disciple often robbed other people's things. He had even injured someone before. However, that was something that happened in the gladiator arena. Since then, I have followed Master. Master told disciple that other people's things belong to other people. Only things obtained with one's own strength are one's own. Especially when disciple saw the bun shop owner and his staff buy meat, knead the dough, wrap the buns, and steam the buns. Disciple knew that buns are not fruits on the tree and do not grow out of thin air. Disciple stopped robbing other people's things. And Xiaohua's expression did not change. Seeing that Yuanya had stopped talking, he asked again. And? That's all. Yuanya was stunned and answered casually. Sigh. Xiao Jian sighed in his heart. Xiaohua's tone was obviously a little loose. Perhaps Yuanya could say a few more words? Actually, Xiaohua had already vaguely promised Yuanya before, but Xiao Jian was still not at ease. After all, Yuanya did not become Xiaohua's disciple. How about this? Xiaohua saw Yuanya's honesty and thought for a moment. This old man has a weapon here. If you can pick it up, this old man will accept you as his disciple. Saying this, Xiaohua shook his hand and took out the heaven-leveling rod and casually placed it on the ground. Looking at this 1-meter-long iron rod as thick as a duck egg, Xiao Jian was overjoyed. Yeah, quick, quick. Senior Xiao wants to accept you as his disciple. That's right. This heaven-leveling staff was so unremarkable. Anyone who saw it would know that this was Xiaohua giving Yuanya a way out. Xiao Jian was very clear about Yuanya's strength. Not to mention this thin staff. Even if there were 2 more, Yuanya would still play around with it. Yes, master. Yuanya's eyes were also filled with ecstasy. He rushed to the heaven-pacing staff, bent down, and grabbed it with one hand. He channeled his strength and tried to lift the heaven-pacing staff. Unfortunately, when Yuanya exerted his strength, his hand actually slipped. He leaned back and almost fell. Xiao Jian was stunned, and he couldn't help but stare fixedly at the rod that seemed extremely ordinary. Rise! Yuanya didn't dare to be careless this time. He walked in front of the heaven-leveling staff and reached out with both hands. The sky-leveling staff didn't rise as Xiao Jian and Yuanya had expected. It didn't even sway. Master, I can't lift it. Yuanya was very direct. He immediately let go after trying. His eyes were filled with frustration, but he still answered Xiaohua honestly. Then don't call me master. Xiaohua waved his hand. Yes, master. Yuanya was so used to answering that he blurted it out without thinking. Xiaohua was too lazy to bother about it. He stretched out his hand and easily grasped the heaven-leveling rod. Then, he pulled the rod into the space. Seeing the sky-leveling staff mysteriously disappear, Xiao Jin suddenly exclaimed, "Small universe pouch. Senior actually has a small universe pouch. All right, you can busy yourself later." Xiaohua didn't ask what a small universe pouch was. He saw that Yuan Ye's shout had already attracted some villagers. He waved his hand, turned around, and walked out of the east room. Now, there seemed to be some people in the temple, and they were respectfully offering incense. He walked out of the temple, found a secluded place, and started practicing the Big Dipper divine fist again. Seeing that Xiaohua had left, Yuan Ye hung his head dejectedly. Xiao Jin looked at him and wanted to comfort him, but he knew that anything he said would be useless. He could only say nothing and walk out on his own. As soon as Xiao Jin walked out of the east room, someone immediately saw him. Two middle-aged men hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "Taoist Xiao, this humble one is from the Immortal Town's eastern suburbs. I just heard that Taoist Zhao's cultivation is profound, so I hurriedly came to seek Taoist Zhao's advice. This humble one's family is about to be married, and I don't know which day is suitable." Seeing that there were people coming over, Xiao Jin's face immediately became solemn. After listening to the two men, he pretended to be profound. His finger was still moving up and down. After half a cup of tea's time, he opened his mouth and said, "If we're talking about marriage, cough cough. If we're talking about an auspicious day, it's tomorrow at noon." Xiao Jin's spittle flew everywhere, and he spoke for half a meal's time. The two middle-aged men were completely convinced by his words, and they were so happy that they wanted to take out their copper coins as thanks. Xiao Jin shook his head slightly and pointed at the merit box that had just been placed on top of the main hall. He said in a deep voice, "This old man is under Taoist Zhao's orders to solve the problems of the villagers of Immortal Town. These gifts can be sent to the merit box. That's for Taoist Zhao. This old man will use the merit in the box to reconstruct Taoist Zhao's golden body, so that the villagers of Immortal Town will forever be under Taoist Zhao's grace." Excellent. The two middle-aged men looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with sincerity. Fine. The merit given to Taoist Zhao was naturally different from the gifts given to Taoist Zhao. The copper coins from before were not enough, so the two of them took some more before they were willing to put them into the merit box and hurriedly left. Damn it! This old man finally knows why the monks of Xiao Jin Temple are so rich. Seeing this situation, Xiao Jin could not help but curse Monk Mingyu in his heart. Those bald donkeys took too many copper coins from this old man's pocket. In 10 days, no, in 9 days, I will chase all of you out of Immortal Town. This old man wants to take back what I lost before. Yeah. Taoist Zhao was prepared to go to the main hall by himself, but he thought that it would be beneath his status as a Taoist disciple, so he thought of Yuan Ye. However, after a while, Yuan Ye did not reply. He raised his head and saw that Yuan Ye had unknowingly climbed up the banyan tree and was secretly looking out of the Taoist temple. His caution and eagerness made it seem as if he was peeping at a woman taking a bath. Taoist Xiao could not help but shake his head and sigh. Senior Xiao has already said so much, and even took out something heavy that you can't lift. Don't you know that the old man has already blocked the way? Forget it. This old man will go there myself. Taoist Xiao had no choice but to personally go to the main hall of Jiangchao Temple to receive the devotees who were worshipping the sea god. There were not many people on this day, and it was much better than the deserted streets. Of course, it was a world of difference compared to Xiao Jin Temple's prosperous incense. However, in Taoist Zhao's eyes, this was already the life of a deity. Every time he saw the devotees take out copper coins, and every time he heard the crisp sound of copper coins falling into the merit box, Taoist Zhao's wrinkles would increase by another layer. His eyes had long been narrowed into slits from smiling. There were even more people on the second and third day, and Taoist Xiao became more and more tired. However, the more tired he was, the more his heart was filled. It was filled with flying copper coins. However, just as he was about to calculate the most suitable birth characters for a boy and a girl who were in love with each other, a pungent stench rushed to his nose. A hoarse and pitiful voice sounded, "Taoist Xiao, have pity on us." When Xiao Jin raised his head, he saw a filthy beggar wearing tattered clothes. The beggar was holding a bloody thing in his arms as he knelt in front of him. The stench was coming from the beggar's body. Sigh. How pitiful. Xiao Jian hurriedly reached out and took out a few copper coins from his arms. That kind of nimbleness was far different from the poor man who could not even take out a single copper coin a few days ago. Then, he happily handed them to the beggar and said, "Take these and go buy some food, Daoist Xiao." The beggar did not get up. Instead, he handed the bloody thing in his arms to Xiao Jian and said sorrowfully, "I don't dare to ask for Daoist Zhao's charity. I only ask for Daoist Zhao's grace to save this child." Ah! Only then did Xiao Jian see clearly that there was a bloody child in the beggar's arms. Although he did not know where the child was hurt, looking at the child's purplish lips and tightly shut eyes, Xiao Jian already knew that this was not something he could do. "Get up quickly." Xiao Jian hurriedly took out a few more copper coins from his arms and handed them to the beggar. "This child is injured, right? I am not a doctor. How can I cure him? Quickly take these copper coins and go to the medical hall to find a doctor to treat him. Daoist Xiao, please take pity on this child." The beggar still did not get up and pleaded, "This child was picked up from the gutter by me. I have already raised him up. Today, I was begging on the street with him when he was hit by a crazy horse carriage. Not only was this child trampled by a horse, but he was also run over by a horse carriage. A kind doctor in the medical hall has already seen him. I'm afraid he won't survive the night. I heard that there is a deity in the Jiangshao temple who saved the villagers of General Ridge. Therefore, I came here step by step from the town. Please pray for this child, Daoist Xiao. Please save this child. Lord, see God. Father, I'm in pain." At this point, the bloody child seemed to wake up and groaned as he spoke softly. "Gua gua." The beggar shouted, "Father is begging Daoist Xiao. He will definitely save your life." Ah, this beggar. At this moment, some people had already gathered around. A young man exclaimed, "He has no legs. He crawled up the Jiangshao temple while kneeling. Io, that's right. This is all blood stains." Another few young men exclaimed. Two of them even ran out of the Taoist temple. Indeed, the faint blood stains were imprinted on the mountain path of Jiangshao Ridge, all the way to the bottom of the mountain. Previously, Xiao Jian was still hesitant. He was afraid that this beggar adopted this child so that he could use some means to cripple this child and make him beg like a beggar. Now that he saw the blood stains, he knew that the beggar loved this child dearly. He hurriedly shouted, "Yeah? Quick, go to the west room and get some warm water to wash this child. All right, let Daoist Xiao come and help. I will beg Daoist Xiao to see if he can show mercy." -11. Chapter 3187. Yuanya was originally lying on top of the banyan tree, secretly watching Xiao Hua practice martial arts. He was startled by Xiao Jian's fierce shout. When he saw the situation inside the Taoist temple, he hastily shouted, "Master, quickly come over. There is a pitiful child here. Master asked you to come and help." As he spoke, he quickly jumped down from the tree and started a fire on the stove in the corner of the temple, preparing to boil water. Xiao Hua, who had been in peace for 3 days, suddenly heard Yuanya calling him. He released his Buddha's sense, and when he understood, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Xiao Jian was right. This matter. He had to help. This injured child's injuries were very serious. If it wasn't for the fact that the child was young and full of vitality, he wouldn't have been able to hold on until now. Moreover, the child had already reached the final stage. In less than an hour, if he wasn't treated, he would definitely die. Forget it. Xiao Hua withdrew his fists and slowly walked back to the temple. After all, it is a life. If I can save it, I will save it. When Xiao Hua walked back to the west wing, Yuanya had already placed a large wooden bucket inside. He was waiting for the water to heat up so that he could wash the child. "Go and bring the child in," Xiao Hua ordered. "Yes, master." Yuanya responded and prepared to go out. However, after taking 2 steps, he turned his head and whispered, "Master, this child, you must save him. As long as you save him, I will do whatever you ask me to do." Including not peeking at me practicing martial arts? Including not worshipping me as your master? Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Yes." Yuanya clenched his teeth and said, "Oh, why?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. "Because this child also has no parents," Yuanya said, then turned around and left, not saying another word. Xiao Hua looked at Yuanya's firm back and didn't know what he was thinking. Yuanya carried the child into the west wing. However, other than the beggar who was anxiously looking at him, everyone's gaze fell on Xiao Hua, who was shouting in the main hall. "Taoist Master Xiao, please have mercy and save this child." Xiao Hua's words came one after another as if he didn't stop. It was as if the worn-out statue could still hear his voice. While Taoist Xiao was trying to act mysterious, Xiao Hua took the child from Yuanya's hands. Xiao Hua placed his hand on the child's pulse, closed his eyes for a moment, then moved his fingers as if they were flying, pointing at several places on the child's body. Soon after, he strangely took out a dozen silver needles and inserted them into the child's body. As the silver needles entered the child's body, black blood slowly flowed out from the child's 7 orifices. Yuanya was shocked at first, but when he saw that there were small blood clots in the black blood, he immediately understood that this was the dirty blood that had accumulated in the child's body. Xiao Hua was cleaning this dirty blood out. Immediately after, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out 2 pieces of yellow paper. He waved his hand and placed them on the child's body. With a flash of green light, the yellow paper disappeared. The child's body slightly trembled and no longer moved. "Call Xiao Jian in." After Xiao Hua fed the child another pill, he handed the child to Yuanya and said, "Clean the child." Yes, this time, Yuanya did not call him master. After cleaning the child, Yuanya hurriedly called out, according to Xiao Hua's instructions, "Master, the child has been cleaned. Come and take a look." Xiao Jian, who was in the main hall, was already exhausted. He was waiting for Yuanya's call. He knew that Xiao Hua would definitely not watch with folded arms, so he hurriedly rushed over from the main hall. Immediately after, he pretended to take a look, then turned around and returned to the courtyard of the Taoist temple. He kowtowed towards the statue in the main hall and muttered something that no one knew. When the beggar saw this, he hurriedly moved to Taoist Zhao's side and kowtowed with all his strength. When the people at the side saw this, a woman knelt down first, then everyone else also knelt down one by one. They called out to Taoist Xiao, or Lord Sea God, asking for the god's grace. The sound of prayer became louder and louder, causing Xiao Hua's heart to move. When Xiao Hua's mind entered his Niwen palace, he saw that the Buddha's fire in the Buddha's sarira was flickering with a golden light. It was flickering incessantly above the prayer. This Buddha's fire, I'm afraid it's related to prayer and the power of faith. Xiao Hua looked pensive. His mind came out of his Niwen palace, and with a flick of his finger, a banyan fruit on the banyan tree fell on top of Taoist Zhao's head. Taoist Xiao has bestowed the medicine. Taoist Xiao has bestowed the medicine. Xiao Jian shouted and hurriedly took out the banyan fruit that was smaller than a soybean and hid it on his head. Then, he took out the banyan fruit that was smaller than a soybean and landed on the ground. "Many thanks, Taoist Xiao." Hot tears flowed out of everyone's eyes. The joy of helping others was 100 times greater than the joy of helping oneself. Xiao Jian took the spirit medicine and walked in front of the child in Yuanya's arms. He glanced at Xiao Hua, then handed the banyan fruit to Xiao Hua and said, "Taoist Xiao, I'll have to trouble you to give this spirit medicine to the child." Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Jian unhappily. He knew that he did not dare to put the banyan fruit into the child's mouth. He only took the banyan fruit, pretended to give it to the child, and then put it into the space. "Sure enough, it's really a spirit medicine," Xiao Jian said extremely exaggeratedly. "It melts in the mouth. It melts in the mouth." That is to say, Taoist Xiao bestowed a spirit medicine, and we picked ordinary banyan fruits. How could there be such an effect of melting in the mouth? It melts in the mouth. Sure enough, it's an immortal medicine. Hearing these words, Xiao Hua despised Xiao Jian to the extreme. Other than melting in the mouth, what other words can there be? Thinking of the craziness from a few nights ago, Xiao Jian did not know what Xiao Hua was thinking and hurriedly added the last sentence. "This banyan tree is not young anymore. It can no longer withstand the blind worship of the villagers." Fortunately, with Xiao Jian's words, Everyone shifted their fanatical gazes away from the banyan fruit. At this moment, Xiao Jian's face froze. His eyes suddenly widened, and he looked at the statue with an even more inconceivable expression. He hurriedly bowed towards the top of the main hall and said anxiously, "Disciple knows, disciple knows, disciple will definitely explain in detail to these benevolent masters." Everyone felt strange. They had already guessed that it was definitely Lord Sea God or Taoist Xiao who was talking to Taoist Xiao, but what exactly were they talking about? Looking at the dirty beggar in front of him, the high-spirited Taoist Xiao suddenly did not know how to address him. "Immortal elder," that beggar hurriedly called out. "This lowly one does not have a name, and also does not dare to mention my name in front of God, lest it blasphemes his ears. Immortal elder can just call this lowly one Dog's father." "Oh, Dog's father." Taoist Xiao slightly shook his head. "This is your fault. This lowly one. Dog's father was really anxious and hurriedly kowtowed again. He really did not understand where he had gone wrong. In front of Taoist Xiao, in the eyes of Lord Sea God, we are all ants, no matter if we are rich or poor, male or female. We are all his people, and we all have to be protected by him. If you feel that your name has blasphemed Lord Sea God's ears, then wouldn't you have to remove yourself from Lord Sea God's eyes? This lowly one does not dare. This lowly one does not dare." That dog's father was moved to tears. He really did not expect that a beggar like him would actually have the same status as others in front of God. "All right, I will not say any more." Taoist Xiao hurriedly waved his hand again, and then raised his voice to say to everyone, "Just now, I received Lord Sea God's oracle. Dog's life is already fine. However, there are still some injuries on his body, and these are things that I, a mortal, can heal. Thus, Lord Sea God disdained to take action, and let us send Dog to the town's medical hall." Why does Taoist Xiao need to personally go? Just as Xiao Jian finished speaking, a few kind men and women had already stepped out from the crowd. "Leave this matter to us. Taoist Xiao should still stay in the Taoist temple and serve Lord Sea God." All right, in that case, many thanks to everyone. Lord Sea God will see what everyone has done." Seeing that these few people were dressed like fishermen, Xiao Jian immediately changed Taoist Xiao to Lord Sea God. Xiao Hua, who was at the side, was both angry and amused. He sent a voice transmission to Xiao Jian to take out some copper coins to give to that dog's father, and let him go to the medical hall to treat the injuries in his body. In Xiao Jian's mouth, he actually directly asked the kind men and women in the Taoist temple to go, saving himself a lot of copper coins. A woman hugged the dog, and a few people held the dog's father, and a large group of people followed behind to watch the show. Thinking of how the doctor in the medical hall would determine the condition of the dog, and personally seeing a child on the verge of death come back to life, they would probably be able to show off to others every day for the rest of their lives. Everyone left, and the entire Taoist temple suddenly became cold and cheerless. Xiao Jian looked to his left and right, seemingly not used to it. "Many thanks, Senior." Xiao Jian saw Xiao Hua walk out, and Yuanya, who was behind him, easily carried the large wooden bucket to the outside of the Taoist temple to pour water. He hurriedly bowed and said to Xiao Hua, "Why didn't this disciple think of letting that child go to the medical hall? This way, wouldn't a lot of people in Longevity Town know about the miracle of my River Tide Temple?" "Humph! How can this old man be so narrow-minded like you?" Xiao Hua waved his hand, slowly walked out of the Taoist temple, and said disdainfully, "This old man originally didn't know the Qi Huang technique. That child took a pill, but it couldn't heal the bones in his body. These things can only be cured by a real doctor. Do you really think this old man is really the sea god?" Yes. After seeing Xiao Hua's ability, Xiao Jian really admired Xiao Hua from the bottom of his heart. How could he dare to refute half a word? Xiao Hua also didn't pay attention to him and went out to practice martial arts. Yuanya scuttled back to the banyan tree and continued to secretly learn from Xiao Hua. The matter of the dog seemed to be very sensational. The River Tide Temple, which had returned to its peaceful state before noon, welcomed a stream of people in the afternoon. These people didn't just bring incense and candles, they also brought sacrificial items, and many of them even left copper coins in the merit box. At this time, Although Taoist Xiao was smiling from ear to ear in his heart, his face was even more solemn. He didn't even ask questions like he usually did. He held a snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand, and in front of the damaged statue in the main hall, he pretended to be an expert and answered the questions of the kind men and women. -11. Chapter 3188. On the sixth day, the long-awaited statue of Lord Sea God was finally completed. The face of the statue was the same as the one Xiao Hua saw that day. The craftsman's craftsmanship was very exquisite. The statue looked very lifelike, as if it was alive. The celebration of the reconstruction of the golden body was even more grand. At this time, the matter of the Jiangqiao temple was no longer Taoist Zhao's matter alone. Not only did the fishermen come, there were also the villagers of the General Ridge and the devout townspeople who came to help. The celebration was extremely lively and took half a day's time. However, this had nothing to do with Xiao Hua. Even if there were some chores, Yuanya would go and help. Taoist Xiao did not dare to rashly trouble Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was naturally happy to have peace and quiet. He was constantly using the Big Dipper divine fist beside the Taoist temple. Xiao Hua's appearance naturally attracted the attention of others. However, the adult's attention was only attracted by the bustling Taoist temple for a moment. Who would still look at a Taoist who was endlessly practicing inexplicable punches and kicks? On the other hand, there were some children who were happily playing near Xiao Hua. There were even some who were standing there and gesticulating. Only when the sun set in the west did the people in the Taoist temple gradually become sparse. Only when the sky was completely dark and a half-moon appeared on the horizon did the Taoist temple become completely deserted. Senior. Xiao Jian walked out of the Taoist temple and stretched his body. He raised his voice and said, "You have been practicing punches and kicks here for an entire day. Aren't you tired?" "You have your tiredness. I have my leisure." Xiao Hua withdrew his punches and kicks. Naturally, he would not be tired. However, this kind of boring punches and kicks, even though there was a cool current flowing from his bones and he enjoyed it very much, he also felt bored after a long time. "Ya, don't look anymore. Quickly go and boil some hot water for this old man." Xiao Jian shouted towards the banyan tree again. "This old man is tired for an entire day. My whole body stinks of sweat. You are just hiding on the tree and idling." "Yes, master." Yuan Ye's unchanging voice came from the top of the tree. Then, there was the sound of the branches swaying. The pitiful banyan tree, in these few days, other than Yuanya hiding on top of it, it was also ravaged by many good men and women. The effect of the banyan fruit was already equivalent to an immortal pill. Who didn't come to Jiangqiao Temple to get one or two? Although Xiao Jian had already made it clear, how could a person's greed be dispelled with just a few words? Looking at this Xiao Daoist who was not too particular about cleanliness a few days ago, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Congratulations, Daoist Xiao. This Jiangqiao Temple is becoming more and more prosperous. Today, Lord Sea God's golden body has been reconstructed. I'm afraid it won't be long before Jiangqiao Temple is rebuilt." "Hee, isn't it all thanks to Senior's help?" Xiao Jian said with a smile. "And in a few days, I still have to rely on Senior's help. Yes, if Senior wins against the Little Gold Temple, this disciple won't have to rebuild the river and tide temple. I'll just chase away the bald donkeys in the Little Gold Temple and erect the statue of Lord Sea God there." "It can't be that simple," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Zhang Chaoguan is but a single disciple of Yuanya. This old man doesn't know how many monks there are in Shaojian Temple, but there are definitely more than Zhang Chaoguan. With just the two of you, how can you stand firm in Shaojian Temple?" "Hee, I won't hide it from Senior." Xiao Jian laughed softly and said, "Disciple is already considering how to recruit disciples. But, speaking to here," he said regretfully, "it's a pity that this disciple has only used a few Taoist techniques. I can only rely on Yuanya to teach them some martial arts. I still can't form a real threat to Shaojin Temple." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Although this old man doesn't know, this old man doesn't believe that other than Jiang Chaoguan having Taoist disciples, there aren't any other places. As long as your Jiang Chaoguan's name is spread out, there will definitely be other Taoist disciples coming to contact you." "AI, yes, it should be like this." Xiao Jin didn't hide anything from Xiao Hua inside. Today's Jiang Guan can be considered as a paradise. It is the time for this disciple to be at peace. If other Taoist disciples were to find out, they would definitely reach out. But this disciple doesn't have any magic power, so I can only be used as a wedding dress by others. Actually, this disciple is sometimes very conflicted. On one hand, this disciple wants Jiang Guan to have a flourishing incense and endless miracles to benefit the longevity town. But at the same time, this disciple knows that after the flourishing incense, this disciple is very unwilling to provoke. Hee. Hearing this, Xiao Hua laughed coldly and said, "This Xiao doesn't know what will happen in the future. But now, your trouble has already come. It can't be? So fast?" Xiao Jian was shocked. His eyes flashed with a trace of panic as he hurriedly looked down the mountain. Unfortunately, at this time, the night had already enveloped the entire mountain. No matter how far Xiao Jian looked, other than darkness, there was only darkness. However, Xiao Jian immediately recovered his calm and said with a smile, "With Senior here, this disciple has nothing to be afraid of. Hee. This Xiao only promised you to accept the challenge of Xiao Jian Temple." "I never promised." Xiao Hua said with a smile. Suddenly, he was slightly stunned and his brows slightly wrinkled. "Yuanya," Xiao Hua raised his voice. "Yes, master." Yuanya answered naturally, but when he appeared, there was a trace of awkwardness and embarrassment. Xiao Hua ordered, "There are 2 children at the bottom of the mountain, but you brought them up." "Bottom of the mountain?" Yuanya looked down the mountain in the darkness and was somewhat puzzled. However, he still obediently flew down. After a while, he came out of the darkness with a child in each hand. "Oh, isn't this Brother Lu?" Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Xiao Jian saw the blood-stained youth in Yuanya's left hand, and the flesh on his body was lacerated. "Oh, you know him?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. This disciple doesn't know this Brother Lu's name, but he is a small hoodlum from the town of Longevity's cloak gang. This disciple often saw him when he was selling divination in Longevity's town of Longevity. Xiao Jin nodded. Yuanya came in front of the 2 and put Brother Lu down. Brother Lu shouted as soon as he landed, "Taoist Xiao, quickly leave. Boss Zheng is here to find you." "Boss Zheng? The boss of the cloak gang?" Xiao Jin was shocked. Why is he looking for this old man? My Jiangxiao temple is in a complete mess. The few copper coins we have were all donated by benevolent people. Those are Lord Sea gods. Immortal elder. It really is you. At this moment, Lu Ge saw Xiao Hua at the side. Although there was a kind of surprise on his face, it was more of a gratification. Then, with a plop sound, he knelt in front of Xiao Hua and cried, "Immortal elder, please reach out and save my sister." "I know. Lord Sea God who saved Go-Er is you. As long as you give me a pill, my sister's life will be saved." "Oh, this child still hasn't recovered?" Xiao Hua looked at the girl in Yuanya's hand. Sure enough, the girl's eyes were tightly shut, and she looked like she was unconscious. "That's right, Immortal Elder. That day, you gave me some copper coins. I immediately brought my sister to the medical hall." Louis knelt on the ground and refused to get up. He cried and said, "The doctor prescribed medicine for me. However, after taking it, not only did my sister's condition not get better, it became even worse. Now, the copper coins have been spent and my sister is unconscious. Moreover, my sister's body is very hot. No matter what, I can't lower her temperature." A few days ago, I heard about the miracle of the Jiangxiao Temple from the medical hall's doctor. I also wanted to ask Lord Sea God for help, but Boss Zheng has been looking for me. I don't dare to show myself. At this point, Louis suddenly remembered something. He knelt and shouted, "Taoist Xiao, you must leave quickly. That Boss Zheng has invited an expert and is about to go to the Jiangxiao Temple. If you don't leave now, I'm afraid it will be too late." "Brother Lu, this old man's Jiangxiao Temple is extremely poor. Why did Boss Zheng come here? Even if the Jiangxiao Temple is prosperous these few days, it shouldn't attract the attention of the Zephyr Gang." Xiao Jin trembled and asked Louis, "Do you know the specific reason?" "I don't know." Louis was very anxious. He urged again. I have been hiding in a secret place. However, I was still found by Boss Sheng this afternoon. The two leaders of the Zephyr Gang disappeared. Boss Sheng suspected that it was related to me. Therefore, he blocked me and my sister at that place and used cruel means to deal with me. The injuries on this little one's body were caused by someone beating me up in the afternoon. Looking at Boss Sheng's posture, I knew that I wouldn't be able to come out alive today. However, at dusk, someone suddenly reported to Boss Sheng that the person he was looking for had arrived. Boss Sheng seemed to attach great importance to everyone. He immediately ordered his subordinates to hang me up high and let me slowly starve to death. Then, he hurriedly left. When I was in a daze, I heard him shouting, "Jiangqiao Temple." At this point, Lu Yi licked his dry lips and said with a trace of luck on his face, "Fortunately, I used to have a life and death friend in Longevity Town who could be said to be congenial." After Boss Sheng left, he sneaked back and put me and my sister down from a high place. He told me to quickly leave Longevity Town. Dog butchers always have righteous people. Xiao Jin sighed when he heard this. Dog butchers are more vicious and merciless people. Xiao Hua coldly retorted and asked again, "Then why didn't you quickly escape from Longevity Town? Why did you come to Jiangqiao Temple? Don't you know that coming to Jiangqiao Temple is leading a disaster for Jiangqiao Temple?" "Because." Louis looked at Xiao Hua's calm face. He didn't know what he was thinking. He slightly gritted his teeth and said, "I know Daoist Xiao and also know Ya. I remember that I was caught by Ya. However, not only did he not send me to the Yamen, he even gave me a meat bun." "There is such a thing." Yuanya nodded at the side and agreed in a low voice. It was obvious that he had a good impression of Lu Yi. Also, Lu Yi stole a glance at Xiao Hua and said carefully, "Just now, I already said that I heard that Jiangqiao Temple has the miracle of Lord Sea God that can revive the dead. Thus, I had the thought of sending my sister here. Now that my sister is on the brink of death, I can't care too much. Moreover, I can also send a letter to Daoist Xiao." -11. Chapter 3189. Xiao Hua nodded inwardly. His heart was as clear as a mirror. That day when he met Louis in Daoist robes, other than Daoist Xiao, wasn't he the only one in Chongqing Town to pass on Daoist robes? Since Louis knew Xiao Jian, he naturally knew where he came from. Following that, so many things happened at Jiangqiao Temple, and Louis had seen him easily kill 2 people from the Cloak Gang. With Louis's intelligence, how could he not know that these things were done by him? Today, Louis came for 2 reasons. First, he picked up the child and gave it to his sister. Second, he wanted to inform him. He was afraid that Boss Sheng was looking for him. Although Louis didn't say it, Xiao Hua could tell that Louis didn't say anything under Boss Sheng's torture. Moreover, he didn't mention anything in front of Xiao Jian and Yuanya. Louis's mouth was really tight. You're here. But you didn't think." Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Maybe Boss Sheng didn't think so much. Now that you've run away, he will think more? Perhaps that friend of yours was instructed by Boss Sheng to do this? You coming here, aren't you leading the way for them?" This. Louis's face was already pale from the loss of blood. He hurriedly shouted, "This little one deserves to die. This little one deserves to die. This little one has implicated Immortal Elder." "Hee, there's no need to be like this." Xiao Hua suddenly laughed. "Jiangqiao Temple is here. It's not a secret place. Whatever bullshit Boss Sheng can come if he wants to. It has nothing to do with you. Of course, it has nothing to do with this old man. Yuanya, give this child to me. You accompany Daoist Xiao to welcome Boss Sheng." Yes, Yuanya's consistent answer finally changed under Xiao Hua's threat. Taking the little girl from Yuanya, Xiao Hua unconsciously frowned. The little girl's body was especially hot, like the heat of an ordinary person. However, when Xiao Hua looked at her, this girl's face didn't have any special redness. She didn't look like a normal child with a fever. "Louis, come with this old man." Xiao Hua put away his cold face and said warmly, "No." Louis shook his head. "Immortal Elder only needs to accept Xiao Yun. This little one will be at ease. This lowly one is preparing to escape from Longevity Town." "Hee, Boss Sheng is already at the foot of the mountain. Where can you escape to?" Xiaohua waved his hand and said with a smile, "With this old man here, there is no need to be afraid." "Ah? You?" Louis stood up with difficulty and couldn't help but look back at the dark mountain road in surprise. That place was pitch black, and nothing could be seen clearly. Then, Louis swayed slightly and was about to fall again. After being tortured, the fact that he was able to carry little Yun all the way to Jiangqiao Ridge had already exhausted all of his strength. If it wasn't for Yuanya who had brought him to Jiangqiao Ridge, he definitely wouldn't have been able to come up on his own. Now that he saw Xiaohua and the others, the determination in his heart disappeared. How could he still hold on? Sigh, this child. Xiaohua sighed. He reached out and grabbed Xiao Jian's neck, easily lifting him up. He didn't care about Xiao Jian's anxiety and returned to the Taoist temple. Yeah, Taoist Zhao's heart was already beating like a drum. He looked at the mountain ridge where the night wind was howling and whispered, Can you beat Basheng? This disciple has never seen Basheng, so I don't know. Yuanya looked at the foot of the mountain and narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have noticed something. This disciple will go and get the hammer. With that, Yuanya quickly entered the Taoist temple. Seeing Yuanya being so serious, Xiao Jian became even more restless. He was almost about to pace back and forth. He even occasionally looked in the direction of the Taoist temple and secretly complained about Xiaohua's decision. "Master, don't worry." Yuanya eerily appeared from the shadows of the Taoist temple and said in a low voice, "Since my Jiangqiao temple doesn't have any money that the cloak gang cares about, then it must be because they want the incense of Lord Sea God. I remember that when Master met the local ruffians in Longevity Town, he always used copper coins to solve the problem and didn't let me do anything. Then this time, he used copper coins to solve the problem. I'm afraid it's not that simple." Xiao Jian shook his head slightly. If Basheng is interested in the prosperity of the Jiangqiao temple, then it's easy to deal with. In the future, if there are any profits, just give some to him. But didn't you hear what Brother Lu said? Basheng even brought an expert to the Tidal River temple. That clearly wasn't for the sake of incense. It must be for Senior Xiao. I'm afraid it's one of Senior Zhao's enemies. Since it's for Senior Xiao, then why are you so anxious? Why are you in such a hurry? Yuanya hit the nail on the head. It has nothing to do with you. Killing to silence. Yeah, why don't you understand? Xiao Jian smiled bitterly. You grew up in the jungle, so you don't know how vicious and merciless these people are. We already know so much. How can they let us live to see the sun tomorrow? There's such a saying? Yuanya was also stunned. Where did you get this stick? Xiao Jian suddenly saw that the hammer in Yuanya's hand had disappeared and was replaced by a pitch-black stick as thick as an egg. He asked curiously. Senior Xiao gave it to me. Yuanya explained. That hammer was too light, so this stick was just right for me. Xiao Jian rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, What else did Senior Xiao say? Kill. Yuanya's face turned cold. Brother Lu said that most of the people in the cloak gang had killed people before, especially the people around Basheng. They didn't kill anyone. He hurriedly said with a smile, Since it's a business deal, it's easy to talk about it. Lord Gang Leader, please say a price. In the future, when my Jiangqiao temple is prosperous, I will definitely send things to Cloak Gang on time to show my filial respect to Lord Gang Leader. Ha ha ha, seeing Xiao Jian being so tactful, Zhang Mao laughed loudly. How could your Jiangqiao temple's little bit of incense money be in my eyes? How could it be worth for me to come here personally? Even for the little gold temple, I only sent a deputy gang leader over. When Xiao Jian heard this, he was even more baffled. He carefully said, Since Lord Zhang doesn't care about my Jiangqiao temple's incense money, then I don't know what else my Jiangqiao temple can do business with Lord Zhang. Taoist Xiao, what do you think this is? Zhang Mao said as he took out something from his bosom and casually threw it to Xiao Jian. That thing was black. Xiao Jian didn't dare to catch it and hurriedly dodged. With a pu sound, that thing fell to the ground. Hee, Taoist Xiao is quite cautious, Zhang Mao said with a smile. Xiao Jian hurriedly picked up that thing from the ground and said with a smile, I am old and can't see clearly. When Xiao Jian saw the thing in his hand, he couldn't help but stare blankly. What? Taoist Xiao doesn't recognize this thing? Zhang Mao narrowed his eyes and looked at the thing in his hand. He then looked at Xiao Jian with a smile. -11.